Well, let's take a look how the Great White North, if you're allowed to say that anymore, in Canada, run by Justin Trudeau, the man who decided to freeze the bank accounts of his citizens because they engaged in a protest that he was not fond of. Just imagine if Trump had done that in America when Antifa and BLM were actually rioting, the amount of blowback that he would have gotten. It would have been unprecedented. But of course, if you're on the left in Canada, you're allowed to do that in part because you own the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the CBC. And this is the election night meltdown that we're going to look at today because we all know that they're leftists. Thus, we will see the ice melt and the water start to boil.
And here we go.
Notice in those remarks is that Trump looks visibly tired. You know, he was quite raspy in his voice, a little slow in his stride. And even through that tiredness, you got that signature Trump bluster and confidence. He claimed that he went into Election Day with a very big lead, despite the fact that many polls show Trump and Harris neck and neck. He also said that Republicans are coming out in
propaganda
force.
polls.
He said that many of these battleground states actually look like battlegrounds. And so he was asked whether he would tell his supporters not to have a violent reaction in case he lost. And this is what he said.
Of course there'll be no violence. My supporters are not violent people. I don't have to tell them that. And I certainly don't want any violence, but I certainly don't have to tell. These are great people. These are people that believe in no violence.
By the way, David,
Unlike BLM and Antifa, that went out and rioted for the duration of the 2020 summer and burned down businesses. But you focus on the one riot that was after everybody was shut down on social media, unable to express their views, told that they were racist and misogynistic for not taking a vaccine or for insinuating that it came from a laboratory in Wuhan, where the virus originated from, as opposed to the wet markets. So you're racist if you say maybe it was scientifically created artificially in China, but not that it came from the modes that they choose to eat in the culture.
By saying that it was that question that was violent. And
David, does it not feel surreal that this moment is finally here after all the conversations we have had for months, if not years now? But here at Howard University, the final preparations are underway for whatever this event will be for Kamala Harris. Tonight, we are told that she'll be having a dinner with her family. Tim Walz, her running mate, is also going to be at the Naval Observatory, the residence where the vice president lives. They'll be watching election results together, and then at some point, Kamala Harris will make her way over here to Howard University, her alma mater. She picked it as the location to deliver whatever she's going to deliver tonight, whether it is a hold on, wait and see message, whether it's a victory or whether it's a concession. Who knows? And there are so many other possibilities beyond that. We really don't know what's going to happen. But there's also a bit of an edge to any sort of excitement Democrats may be feeling.
Subscribe to the channel,
guys. No one wants
to
get overconfident like they did back in 2016. The scars of Hillary Clinton's loss to Donald Trump then, it lives deep in the bones of a lot of Democrats. And so they're terrified of that happening again. But tonight, there are signs that people remain optimistic. When you chat with people here, they think that, their gut is that this is going to go her way eventually, no matter how long it takes. But again, no one wants to get too overconfident, and that's the way people here are talking about it.
Which side of the political aisle do you think that this woman is on, just looking at her?
Lessons of 2016
Leave
are
it in the
there,
comments.
Katie, and they do hope that Kamala can take away the trauma. So what was the Harris campaign looking for in the early numbers, in the early results for signs that it's going their way?
Votes for her,
it's
maybe?
All about, did the voters turn up in those big Democratic strongholds where they need those outsized performances to make sure that they can pick up those key swing states? Remember, a word that I've heard from Democrats, heard from pundits, it's that nauseous optimism. Not cautious optimism, nauseous optimism.
I feel cautiously optimistic because all the things that you want to do in a campaign, that's control the controllables, prioritize the priorities and focus on the focus. I think that Democrats up and down the ballot, starting at the DNC in 2020 when Joe Biden became president, have done just that, and we are well positioned to win a 50-50 jump ball because the infrastructure's in place, the candidate quality lines up.
The infrastructure's in place? Do you mean the cheating mechanisms that you guys created in 2020? Probably earlier as well.
As well as the things you want to control, high-tech, high-touch engagement, meeting voters where they are.
Right. So yeah, look, I think Republicans feel cautiously optimistic.
Well, here's why I feel very good about the words I speak. The direct engagement with certain type of voters in certain constituencies has come from the Democrats. There's an argument to be made that the ground game is unmatched that we've seen on our side.
It's unmatched.
To the Republicans, a large portion of that is due to the financial gap in between the two. Kamala's raised over $1 billion, not to mention.
Yeah, y'all spent $1.5 billion, 3x what Trump spent on the election. You had the media behind you propagandizing, and y'all still lost.
Outside groups. And then we've never had a candidate who can speak directly to younger voters in the way that
Hopefully
Kamala
I'm not
Harris
giving
and
away
Coach
any plot
Walz
points there.
has been able to do it. And if you add to that the down ballot races, including the 10 states that has reproductive freedom, reproductive justice on the ballot, I think it gives us an opportunity for a handsome night.
So, Matt, this is
when you talk about issues, Kamala Harris has been consistent in actually putting forth a policy agenda to actually address the issues that voters may have. I would argue that there's a large segment of women in this country who care about the freedom to make their own healthcare decisions. I would argue there's a large segment of young voters who care about the climate crisis and the investments there, as well as things like student loans and economics. I would argue that African Americans care about an economic agenda that speaks directly to them. Well, it's not just the reproduction.
Is he merely repeating the note cards that he received from the DNC? Because there's zero substance behind his words.
Reproductive justice. I think it's the Republicans' anti-women agenda. You're going to see many Kamala Harris supporters who are going to turn into independent thinkers in this election.
And I can tell you, as this day
If you're an independent thinker, you're not a Democrat.
is going on, and as we're focusing on the turnout, we're starting to see a bit of an ugly side in the state as well. There have been reports of bomb threats, and authorities say that these bomb threats at polling stations are coming from Russia. Of course, we've seen bogus video.
Russia. Always be blaming Russia if you got the opportunity.
Wrongly suggesting voter fraud. Authorities are trying to knock those rumors down. We'll find out what the results will be sooner as opposed to the 2020 COVID election. Officials are saying voting is going smoothly. They have new machines that are speeding up the vote count. They've beefed up staffing at the vote count centers to open up those mail-in ballots. But turnout here, in-person turnout here, is higher than expected. The mail-in ballots are lower than expected. So if you're looking
That's
to see
bad
when
news
we're
for
going to get the
Democrats.
results in Pennsylvania, officials are suggesting that they might come a bit sooner than what we saw in 2020. So let's see if that happens.
I covered the entire 2020 election, and it was a crazy time with COVID. And here in Detroit on election night, a group of masked because of COVID Trump supporters went to the counting station. I think we may have some video of that. And they pounded on the glass, demanding that the vote be stopped because Trump was saying he had been winning, and then all of a sudden he was losing. He was suggesting the vote was rigged. It turned out later that was tested and found to be untrue.
By who? Who tested that and found that to be untrue? Any case that went to court, they said that it didn't have standing. There's a big difference between being able to present the actual evidence. This is, once again, propaganda by the CBC.
A very chaotic scene there. The city clerk actually was threatened at her home in subsequent days about this whole event. So they put up bulletproof glass. They've put a police officer at each entrance to the counting center in downtown Detroit, and they've backed off the counting from next to the windows to a room further in.
With some of the thugs that live in Detroit, I suggest you beef up the security even from there.
Access to only staff, observers, and accredited media. So they're trying to keep that secure and hoping that nothing occurs like last year. I think everybody agreed that they can't go back to that 2020 ugly incident counting the vote.
It's just going to be really tight. I mean, I think the one big indicator is we think that the election is probably going to go on a little longer than we anticipated, and that's just coming from some of the incidents that are happening at the polling sites right now.
Bomb threats.
Yeah, the bomb
like
threats
yeah.
and just malfunctions with machines and how, they've won the right to extend the vote a little longer. But there is some initial feedback right now about Pennsylvania, Latino voters coming out in Pennsylvania.
The ground that you're talking with?
Well, I can say that Democrats seem a little more enthusiastic than they were just like a week and a half ago.
We've seen data from Gallup that suggests that voters at least tell pollsters they're hearing a lot more from the Harris campaign. Democratic-leaning voters were much more likely to be contacted by the Harris campaign than Republicans were by the Trump campaign.
What's your sense? I mean, a high Latino turnout in Pennsylvania, good or bad for the Republicans?
I mean, high Latino turnout would be good for Democrats.
Well, I was just going to say, to his point about Georgia, I think...
Do you know how many voters of Latino ethnicity Trump gained this election cycle? Just imagine it next time if his presidency is a success, which it appears to be at this point.
Georgia will be important. We'll know, I think we'll have a pretty good sense of how Georgia's going early enough in the evening that it'll give us a sense of direction. David won't be surprised that my instinct is that Georgia's going for Harris, and I think as the rest of the country plays out, it will be very hard for the former president to win without the state of Georgia. I also think another neighboring state of David's may very well go for Harris, and I think that is North Carolina.
I actually think Georgia's it's going to be narrow, but I believe from everything I'm hearing and reading, Georgia's going with Trump barely, and North Carolina as well.
I just feel strongly that the momentum is in the Harris direction. I do think, David, that it's going to be a more definitive win in Georgia this time. Obviously, President Biden won Georgia by roughly 12,000 votes. We elected 2 Democrats to the United States Senate in 2020, largely because people were rejecting President Trump at the time. And I think fundamentally, like many experts have been saying on TV, and I'm seeing this in the North Atlanta suburbs as we speak, I think women are going to reject Donald Trump for a lot of reasons.
We have very early numbers from Indiana and Kentucky. No surprise, I'm sure, for either of you, but I do want to give results. 70% of the votes in Indiana for Donald Trump, 80% of the votes in Kentucky also for Donald Trump. So I just wanted to...
I do think that we may be turning a page here, not to take the line from Vice President Harris, but I am very hopeful that the outcome of this election will be sufficiently clear that we will be able to move on as a country.
It was, thank God.
Our society is tired of all of this now. We've been going through it for 6-8 years, and
I'll tell you what we're tired of. We're tired of being told to shut up on the internet, that our views are racist and misogynistic at every single opportunity the moment that we disagree with the left, that we must mask our children and keep them home from school, away from learning, that we can't play sports because you concocted a disease that will give you authoritarian measures that you can employ all over the country and the globe.
And I think we're all ready after this election to join hands and say, whoever wins is the new president, and we're going to restore civility and respect for each other. I may be overly optimistic, but that's where
Democrats
I think
respecting
we're
Trump,
come out of all
right?
Of this, and I believe, and
that is overly optimistic.
The margin tonight in the Electoral College is going to be sufficiently significant on the Harris side that any whining about it will be comical.
Yes, I think Donald Trump's going to get reelected, or be reelected, President of the United States. And
I want to ask you about the statement we've seen from the FBI today about bomb threats in several states, including places like Georgia and Michigan. And the Federal Bureau of Investigation says this appears to trace back to Russia. What's your reaction to news that this sort of interference and these sorts of threats are being made on voting day here in the United States?
Well, I have two reactions. First of all, I'm not surprised.
And fair. So those are Republican states. Trump running slightly ahead of the 2020 results in those early numbers, but we're still a ways away from a final decision in those states. So we're going to dig.
There were bomb threats. I heard you talking with the ambassador there that were associated with Russia, it seems. Non-credible bomb threats, but nonetheless, they frighten people. They delay the process. There's been an attempt to extend the voting. So I think that kind of stuff will add some time, but
have Kentucky and Indiana on the board, both leaning heavily for Trump. James, like you, I think the immigration issue, should Trump win, will become a very real challenge for Canada, because even if he takes no action, the fear that he will take action could be enough to drive people towards Canada. So
if y'all want to take all the loony leftists into your great white north country full of frozen tundra, y'all are welcome to have them, because they fit right into the leftist dystopia that you've created there, where you don't go to jail for pedophilia, but you do go to jail for accusing somebody of being a pedophile.
There is a sense
Or just
of
misgendering
energy and
people.
excitement, and it is just starting to build here at Howard University, David. Some of the
It's
students,
so
about
exciting.
1,000
Go
students
Kamala.
and staff members here have been given permission, given special passes to come and watch what's going to happen tonight. The music is just starting to pump, and so it really is feeling like a celebration, even though no one within the Democratic Party wants to get ahead of themselves, especially given how close the polls are suggesting this race is and how deeply divided this country is. Tim Walz actually spotted on the National Mall down by the Lincoln Memorial here in Washington, D.C. earlier today. Out for a run,
exciting.
perhaps to get some of the energy and excitement and the nerves out.
he has won Kentucky, which is not a surprise. This is
Well, Democrats want to hang on to that state. Donald Trump wants to win it back. Joe Biden winning that very famously by just under 12,000 votes, and the drama and the criminal charges that followed the effort of Donald Trump to try and pressure officials into getting that state added to his
Nice
electoral
framing.
college tally. And the source said, well, my gut is she's got it, but the source didn't want to trust their gut, because they've been betrayed before. Democrats have been here before. They might see momentum on their side.
You mean wishful thinking,
They might
not
have
looking
hope,
at statistics,
but again,
actual real
the
polls?
scars of 2016.
Not the propagandistic polls that are put out daily as paid for by Democrats, like Ann Seltzer's poll, which they'll probably get to.
What happened with Hillary Clinton? Democrats are terrified of getting ahead of themselves, even if they are projecting confidence in this moment. They are rattled by that and not necessarily willing to trust their gut in this moment, because they need to start seeing those numbers.
Katie, was your source Tim Walz? Were you jogging with the governor of Minnesota by the Lincoln Memorial? Is that how
I was
you know
just
this?
out there.
Does it look like she ever jogs? I mean, if you're going to make a joke like that, at least make it to somebody that weighs less than 220 pounds.
Of course. I was like, excuse me, sir, running with a microphone, being like, excuse me, have a little moment for the Canadian public.
Yeah.
He sounded tired today. He sounded kind of worn out. It's been a long campaign. It's been a tough fight for him. It's been a tough fight for the Democrats as well. But he sounded, and I don't want to, he was tired, and I don't want to read too much into it. But to my mind, to my listening, he didn't have the same bluster. And it could be that he was just tired, but he was talking about, he wasn't even sure if he was going to come out to the victory party tonight. He was going to wait and see, what was going to happen, what the results would be. And he was asked as well, if you don't win this, are you going to accept it? That's really been the question that's been hanging over this election. If it doesn't go Donald Trump's way, will Donald Trump accept that? Will his followers, his supporters accept that? And he said, if it's a fair fight, if it's a fair election, I will accept it. We've heard that before from Donald Trump, of course, but it's going to be interesting just to watch as this night goes on to hear what Donald Trump says, if he says anything. Of course, think back to 2020. We saw Donald Trump come out at 2:30 in the morning while the votes were still being counted and declare victory. Of course, he hadn't won at that point. He hadn't won, and he's been saying ever since that election was stolen from him. So it's really, really going to be interesting to listen to see what happens at the Trump campaign headquarters and to hear what Donald Trump and his supporters say as the night goes on.
And I agree with you. He looked more tired and worn out a bit today, but he's also 78, right? So like he's a lot older than back then.
There was a certain darkness to his campaign.
Darkness.
There was a lot of talk about. There was a lot of very cutting insults toward
Darkness
Kamala
as
Harris.
opposed to the light of
we've been hearing
Trudeau
that for a long time, but there just seemed to be a real edge to Donald Trump. But a big question that's been hanging over this election: what does Donald Trump say? And more importantly, I guess, what do his supporters say if this doesn't go their way?
What are your thoughts?
The vibes have been electrifying. People are really heartened by the fact that the turnout in Philadelphia is 120%.
This woman here, I'm 95% sure, is named Lily, and she has since defected from the Democrat Party. She was a big fundraiser for the Dems, and she felt that the money was misspent, that she was lied to, and the moment that she veered off of Democrat talking points, they called her the worst possible names that one could imagine, she says. And I think now she's actually a Republican.
Turnout in 2020. So that is incredibly significant. We see record turnout in the state of Michigan as well. So I think Kamala Harris has a very good chance of holding on to those blue wall states, which will determine the outcome of the election. And that will be Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So the vibes here are electrifying. People are really happy. So this isn't just anecdotal. This is like empirical evidence. We did not have these lines in 2020. Of course, we also had the pandemic. So generally speaking, when the American people come out and express their will, the Democratic Party wins. We always win the popular vote.
We all came out and expressed our will, and the Republican Party won. Trump won.
Because they know without the handicap, without the help, without their inherent electoral college advantage, they will likely never win the White House again. So one thing
Good
that
prediction.
I also want to point out is that the floating pile of garbage remarks has really reverberated around America. We have 400,000 Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania.
Do you know why there was any echo? It was because the Democrats framed it as Trump calling Puerto Ricans garbage, when in fact it was a comedian talking about the garbage problem with the overfilled landfills on the island of Puerto Rico. But once again, the false framing in order to gain an advantage politically is not essentially, it is in fact lies. And this is all the Democrat Party does. Lie, lie, lie. Thus, I'm no longer a Democrat.
And Trump managed to anger all of them. People are just really mad. They feel like Trump denigrated their community.
I'm so angry.
Said in their gut, they think she's got it. She being Kamala Harris. That sounds like where you are. You think now that it's largely done except the counting, you think this is a Harris win?
This party is a party of senior Democrats. We have governors walking around, DNC officials. I haven't heard a single person doubting the outcome of the election. I think people think we have it in the bag. And it's not just vibes. It's actual data. Like right now,
like the COVID data that you tried to manipulate us with, the quote unquote actual data that always, veers in the direction that you want. Just pointing that out.
We've been in the middle of interviews, so I haven't been able to monitor Philadelphia. But as of 20 or 30 minutes ago, we are 100,000 votes up over our 2020 vote turnout. So that is tremendous. Philadelphia turned out in ways that we haven't seen in recent elections. So I'm extremely heartened by that. But I raised $3 million for her in a month. That is just phenomenal, especially for someone my age. And the reason for that is the energy and the energy and the promise behind the Harris campaign. Americans around the country are so deeply invested in our democracy. They see this as existential. This isn't your grandfather's election. The fate of the republic is hinging on tonight, on this week. And I'm not exaggerating. This is not hyperbole. We are running against someone who has no respect, who doesn't consider our republic to be sacred. I am a naturalized.
Do you really consider the republic sacred when your candidate is threatening to shut down free speech, calling free speech a privilege, demanding that people get wokeified? Is this respect for the republic, trying to put your political opponent in jail? I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy so that everybody can see it in action. And these are just talking points, talking heads by these Democrats that are either tied to the party financially or by identity because this is who they are. And this is the type of garbage that they spew.
Americans, for anyone to terrorize our capital, for me, that's unforgivable. And I know countless Americans are.
Why not, once again, on, I believe it was May 29th, 2020, Antifa and BLM nearly burned down the guard post to the White House and injured countless Secret Service who were trying to prevent their advance so that they did not get shot by snipers in the that are on the White House grounds. Why don't these people get prosecuted? Why don't you talk about the insurrection of Antifa and BLM on these days where they nearly burned down St. John's Church neighboring the White House?
Around the country feel the same. And that is why it's different. Because he terrorized our capital. His supporters spread feces around the halls of our capital. This is just something that's so deeply unconscionable.
Oh, you see, now I don't like her, even though she switched.
He was
She's
saying
just
last
a liar.
night that he thinks you have a credible path to winning all 7 battleground states.
Are you sure that's not
really
flipped?
in play? Do you think you can run the table of the 7, or is it, or do you care? You just want 270 and you'll take it?
He has been saying that. One thing that's been really interesting is that you saw Trump make 3 trips to North Carolina. North Carolina, a state that a Democrat hasn't won since Barack Obama. So clearly he's feeling vulnerable there. And that underscores what David said. I think we have a real shot at winning every single battleground state. We're leaving everything on the field, doing everything we can. So I certainly think so. I think the only state that I'm slightly nervous about is Nevada, actually.
You can see the results coming up there is ping pong back and forth. Donald Trump with a lead of 57% to just 42% for Kamala Harris. That is going to change many times throughout the night, folks, so and throughout the week, perhaps. In Florida, not surprisingly, Donald Trump, who lives in West Palm Beach at Mar-a-Lago, is at 53.4% to Kamala Harris is just under 46%. We're bringing you updates as the polls close, and you can see the initial Electoral College votes there on the bottom of your screen. 19 for Trump, 3 for Kamala Harris, and many of the early states closing are Republican-leaning states, so bear that in mind as those numbers change throughout the night.
The Harris Walls folks have had an incredible ground game here. They have got 29 offices. They have offices in places they haven't really had offices before.
No, that ground game the Democrats have built, it's amazing what $1 billion in fundraising can do for you in an election campaign. So.
Yeah, that's right, David. Officials here say that about 31,000 absentee ballot.
Quickly, look at her. Trump voter or Kamala voter? Quickly, just with the look, the crazy eyes, the everything else that you can tell about a person and probably be able to predict which way they vote.
Will have to be recounted. There was an issue with the tabulator. They say it appears that some of the doors were not fully sealed by senior election officials. So to eliminate any doubt and for transparency's sake, they've decided to start the tabulation process over again here at
you in the House here. Can you catch us up on what's happened so far, because things are happening?
Absolutely. Well, if you look at the bottom of the screen, you see a big number for Donald Trump, 60. But that doesn't mean that he is overwhelmingly winning the night. What it does mean is that there's certain states so far this evening that he is doing very well in. States like Florida, for example. Look at that, 82% of the votes counted in Florida. Donald Trump earlier today said, why can't other states count the way Florida does? Of course,
it's a good question.
Adrian, at this point, no surprises, at least North Carolina. Now, it's really early. Not only 60% of the vote counted, but as I'm sure we'll hear from our panel, a lot depends on which votes have been counted so far. So don't read too much into that.
All right, Ian, thank you. So again, just to have a look at the bottom of the board, 90 to Donald Trump, 3 to Kamala Harris. There are no surprises on that board yet. Nothing has happened that is against what people had expected.
Adrian, I don't know if you can hear it, but it is an absolute dance party here. People are line dancing. They're expecting more than 1,000 students and staff. Plus, there are Democrats who are part of the campaign team. They're all filling in here to the quad at Howard University right now. very early in the night. It is a mood of celebration. It is a mood of excitement, but it is tempered by fear. No one here thinks anyone is running away with this race, and there is deep concern, deep fear of a repeat of what happened with Hillary Clinton in 2016. So while there is so much excitement, Adrian, there's such a sense of pride, and they're gathering here, many people gathering here to celebrate. One thing I will say, Adrian, what has happened is that just for a moment, some big screens that are lining the quad here, they started playing some CNN, some American News Network coverage of the results. And when CNN projected that Donald Trump would be winning Florida, the way the crowd started to boo and the way sort of the energy started to just shift just a little bit, it sort of underscores the excitement that everyone has here, but also just the nerves, the edge that so many people are on.
I'm looking forward to all of them going home with their heads hung low and a disappointed look on their faces.
Long night ahead of you, Katie. All right, you said that someone said to you, you're from Canada, why do you care? And together you came to the conclusion that, well, when you're in your home and you smell smoke, you stick your head out the window to see if your neighbor's house is burning down. So the neighbors are up to something, and so...
When Joe Biden was in charge, the American house absolutely was burning down, and everybody in the world could see it, which is part of the reason that Vladimir Putin decided to invade Ukraine. With the debacle in Afghanistan, where we left people behind and sent the troops home early, and servicemen got killed, and billions of dollars were left for the Taliban to rearm themselves. Yeah, I think that makes America look weak, and thus we have World War. Thanks Joe Biden, thanks Democrats. That's the fire that's burning. You should be rooting for Trump to put it out.
That's, as Canadians, we care very deeply to figure out, is something on fire, Rosie?
Yeah, not yet, but that's what we're watching for. And that's because what is at
Another
stake?
attractive
And what is at
leftist
stake
woman
tonight is something that is more predictable and knowable in the Democratic candidate, and something that is more volatile and unpredictable with the Republican candidate.
But also knowable.
Also knowable. What happens to that war in Ukraine, whether Canada is under pressure to pony up more money for NATO, these are all big...
I know, because Canadians want to shirk their responsibilities so that they can use that money to transition children and to employ those dollars for their MAID program, which is essentially assisted suicide by the state. You know, you've got to have your priorities, not chip in your quote unquote fair share. No, that's only for rich people who pay 90-something% of the taxes. No, they're not the ones they're the ones not paying their fair share. Canada doesn't want to chip into NATO because they've got more pressing issues at home. And of course, if you could get away with that, as Joe Biden has let him done, why wouldn't you root for Joe and Kamala?
Issues. And those are the things that people in Ottawa and certainly all Canadians will be thinking about tonight.
Because the last 24 hours, well, last 72 hours, certainly for the Harris camp have been interesting, particularly, polls out of Iowa suddenly suggesting Iowa. Who would have thought Iowa is maybe leaning possibly towards Kamala Harris?
Nobody.
We don't see that in the numbers yet. But what are you thinking about? What are the signals you're getting from the ground?
Well,
this, I believe, is Aisha Mills. And she is an avowed racist who throws her status as a black lesbian, the apex predator of the United States, those who you cannot criticize around. Here's an example.
As an
Aisha,
American,
let's talk about Kamala
makes
Harris.
me really concerned.
Let's talk about Kamala Harris for
as
short-term
a
memory.
black lesbian who Donald Trump doesn't believe has genes as good as his. Is he going to attempt to exterminate me
why do you
when
believe
he
that,
gets
Aisha?
elected?
Why do you
Because
believe
he's
that?
damn near said it. That's why, David. That's why.
Because he's,
okay, and I'm not
has he
going to be
said that,
lectured by some white man who has no idea what he's talking about and is trying to rewrite history here.
Aisha,
I am
shame on you,
afraid
Aisha.
as an
If they were on equal footing, he could have said what we all know to be true. And that's, you carpet licking bitch. You racist.
You said bitch though,
Ain't nothing but a thing.
So you can see exactly what type of person you're dealing with here. Not a good one.
Have been really excited about the momentum going into Election Day. This has been an unprecedented campaign by every measure. You have a candidate who came in late, who galvanized the hearts and minds and spirits of the American people, got a lot of energy,
Only via the
enthusiasm,
propagandistic
created
media.
momentum, and kept going. The Harris campaign has not had any gaffes. It's been flawless.
Completely flawless, other than the fact that she could barely complete a sentence. Just that one minor flaw aside, completely flawless.
Tonight, I think what we're looking at now is that going to translate with women who have needed a permission structure to be able to perhaps vote against their husbands and some of the men in their lives and support Kamala Harris?
Women, you owe your loyalty to the party, not to your family. Go ahead. It's okay to be dishonest with your husband so long as you vote for us.
Harris, even though they may be conservative and generally vote Republican. And I think but remember, 57% of women rejected Donald Trump in the last election. And I do believe that now there will be more women rejecting Donald Trump, and certainly
Good
white
prediction,
women. White
dumbass.
conservative women.
And so just draw your attention one more time to the results bar. I almost said mini bar, but it's not a mini bar. It's a results bar. 90 for Donald Trump, 27 for Kamala Harris. There are no surprises there on the board at all, but surprises are coming. We've seen a little bit of a bump there for Donald Trump at 99, 27 for Kamala Harris. Again, the number they're trying to reach, 270 so far. No surprises on the board. But Ian, as always, has more details.
I kind of feel like a waiter here.
Well,
So
we all kind of do.
let me offer you up 4 swing states
How do you
and a
feel
little
like
surprise.
a waiter?
Nice.
Okay.
All of you.
And of these 4
Does that
swing
make
states,
sense?
Donald Trump only leading in one right now. Here's the one that is so important to both candidates. 19 electoral votes and a lead here for Kamala Harris. Both candidates have spent so much time in Pennsylvania. Here's the surprise, Ohio. And you can see
Ooh,
it's
that's
pretty
good
close,
news for
but a lead
Democrats,
for
isn't it?
Kamala Harris.
There's a sense of anxiety, but also some optimism. Organizers for the Democrats are quite happy with the turnout in Philadelphia. That's exceeded expectations, they say, and that includes Latinos, Puerto Ricans, white African-American voters, and it's exceeded their expectations. We're also starting to see some shenanigans
You mean it includes every race that exists in America? Is that what you mean?
happening elsewhere in the state. There are reports of potential bomb threats that have been levied at voting stations in the central part of Pennsylvania. There is absolutely no evidence of any cheating going on. We're seeing some dark arts happening behind the scenes. We're going to be
Never
following that
evidence of
very
Democrats
carefully. But
cheating,
as Democrats, as I mentioned earlier, are quite happy with what they're seeing tonight. But will this hold? We also know, Adrian, the Democrats have a ground game here. They've got the machine from popular Governor Josh Shapiro that's helping that get out the vote and turnout efforts. The Republican ground game here is not as strong. So we will see tonight if the Democrat machine can continue to pump out these votes in this must-win swing state.
And I have heard a lot of people talking about their anxiety on your show. And so I do just want to start by saying, I know a lot of Canadians are anxious. It's their choice, but we are going to be great.
Why are leftist women just always so darn attractive? Have you noticed that trend? I mean, just they all look like Charlize Theron, another leftist who actually is very, very beautiful. But do you notice the trend? This is with full makeup and everything. Huh.
No matter what.
Okay, well, that's fair.
So, I agree. We'll be fine.
Yes.
She of course, is right
Case in
about
point.
that. But there are degrees of how fine we will be.
Fatty, fat.
Donald Trump has made it clear that if countries cannot get their defense spending up to 2% of GDP, he will consider saying to them, well, then you're out. We're not going to protect you under NATO anymore. Canada is tracking to 2% by 2032. And for now,
Why not do it now? Why not pay your fair share now instead of telling us that in 7 years you'll make do? You know, that's like a friend borrowing money from you and he's promised to pay you back in 7 years. No, you have the money now. Give me the money now.
not planning to
soon
go
enough.
faster than that.
As we've been talking,
course
I've
not.
just noticed that
We gotta pay for
the results
transgender
bar at the bottom,
surgeries.
A little bump up for Donald Trump there, 105 for him, 27 for Kamala Harris. Still obviously very early, 270. That's the number Ian, what's happening here?
Yeah, I think particularly for our audience in Canada, as you look at those numbers, don't think that that means that this is a night where Trump is steamrolling to a win. None of those numbers that we've seen so far
don't think that we're the CBC.
It's still very early in the evening. Not much has changed on the results bar at the bottom of the screen. 105 electoral votes for Donald Trump, 27 for Kamala Harris. No surprises there yet, but as we keep promising, there will be surprises throughout this evening. Numbers haven't changed much at the bottom of the screen. They're 105 for Donald Trump, 27 Kamala Harris. No surprises there yet, still very early on in the evening. Take a live look now at the two headquarters, the Harris headquarters at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and Trump headquarters in Florida, both very busy. Parties, it seems. There's some dancing going on everywhere. It's still early. Let's see how people are feeling in about 14 hours from now. But in the interim, let's go to what an interesting place Georgia has always been. Certainly in 2020, in some ways it was the story of the election. That famous phone call, I just need 11,780 votes, one more than we got. The seed for all those claims about a stolen election.
And what we're seeing is here as the Democrats hold their watch party is that we've seen Trump go out ahead with a big lead. But this is what they refer to in Georgia as the red mirage, because watch for that red mirage, watch for that lead of Trump initially to shrink, but still far too early to call. And as
you're pre-framing what's going to take place. So I tell you, I have a plan to cheat you in some way. And I tell you exactly what you're going to see. So when the cheating begins, when I start to pilfer from your pocket, it won't be unexpected and it won't raise the alarm bells, right? So you pre-frame the country for the red mirage. This is actually what they did in 2020 with pre-knowledge of what they were going to do.
And harkening back
doing
to
the same here
4 years
in
ago,
case they can manage it.
0.2% was why how Joe Biden took it. And of course, that after a number of days of recounts and court battles and charges of election interference. Officials here say they are very confident in their process this time. Watching.
Well, it's early. We've got less than 8% of the vote in Michigan, and Kamala Harris is leading Donald Trump, but we can't really deduce anything from that. People are eating and drinking. It's pretty relaxed here. They're feeling good for the moment, but we have no reliable indications yet of which way this will go.
It is right now 9 p.m. Eastern. Big chunk of states are about to close. You can expect the numbers at the bottom of your screen there to start to bump up a little bit. Aisha, when you look at the early numbers in the so-called blue wall states, and who knows if we'll be calling it a blue wall after tonight. What strikes you most about those numbers?
Well, the fact that it's really early right now. I mean, we're not seeing anything that is super significant because we don't really have the counts in from the urban areas. But Philadelphia has also had a massive turnout. So when you think about who is really banking on turnout, it's always going to be the Democrats, and that ground game of getting voters to the polls on election day really tends to signal that more Democrats are enthusiastic and excited, especially when it comes down to young people and folks in urban areas, and those are the numbers that we don't have yet. So,
so if you're looking at the bottom of the screen, a little bump. You just saw a bump. 151 for Donald Trump, 27 for Kamala Harris. That big bump is because Texas just went, as I understand it, for Donald Trump. Clearly, that is 40. That is 40 Electoral College votes. That explains it, but there's more to come.
So, you know, this number can be misleading, particularly for a Canadian audience who looks at that and says, look at that overwhelming lead for Donald Trump. But for the most part, it reflects what we were expecting. And we have big states where we expect Kamala Harris to do very well in. California, for example, where she would be expected to win all the electoral votes there, hasn't been counted yet. So we continue to look very closely at the swing states and we need to know where those votes are from. But I would think, and we'll hear from Aisha, whether for Democrats this is making them a little nervous.
Yeah, no kidding. To Kevin's point, what's happening in the suburbs there is very interesting.
Well, one thing that Democrats were following very, very closely is a certain race out of Florida, and it has to do with what voters are going to do when it comes to abortion. They were given, and it looks like in Florida, for the first time since this issue was put to voters, that a resolution to expand access to abortion has failed. We spent some time talking to people in Florida.
Yeah, they were certainly hoping this day would be known as Rovember the 5th.
I know, because we should all celebrate the fact that women can kill the babies that are inside of them. It is a glorious thing for any society to expand these services, because the infant, if you've ever seen them in a mother's tummy and heard their heartbeat, they're not really life. They're an inconvenience for the mother, who should be able to decide for herself with taxpayer money, of course.
We'll see. But
so I think we can assume that Georgia is going to move into Mr. Trump's column.
Okay. And for people who are watching, you may be noticing, again, another bump at the bottom of the screen there, 154 electoral votes for Donald Trump, 30 for Kamala Harris. Paul Hunter, this is, are you seeing a picture emerging here that you find curious?
No, I mean, yes.
Okay, Paul,
early.
thanks very much.
You know what? I've been...
Hey, Canada. This is us in the United States, your neighbors. We are having the election.
Note the crazy rimmed glasses meant to get attention. Okay, she's older, but it's just, you can just tell by looking at somebody which way they lean politically most of the time. If you're fit, if you're in shape, then you work hard on something. You work hard on your health, on your body. You take action. You're most likely a more conservative leaning or libertarian voter. If you're fat, overweight, by a lot, and you just have blue hair and these horn-rimmed, weird-looking glasses, you're a Kamala voter.
Lives. Democracy is on the line.
At this point, no big surprises. Some states are leaning in directions that are certainly piquing the interest of both Republicans and Democrats, but those are the firm numbers so far, and at this point in the evening, nothing should surprise anyone about what they are seeing. So we are going to show you this thermometer chart throughout the night. But remember, there is a possibility that no one gets to 270 this evening. At the bottom of your screen, what are those percentages? That is the popular vote that you're seeing tonight so far. That one is going to move around a little bit. What are you tracking in terms
52.1 to 47.
threats and mischief, as John referred to it?
Well, Adrienne, as you said, this isn't just happening in Georgia. It's happened in several key swing states throughout the day today. We heard this, what he called false bomb threats through. He linked those threats to Russia, saying they've appeared to originate from a Russian source. We heard also talking about what were described as non-credible bomb threats there.
All right, yeah, it'll be interesting to see at the end of the evening where most of these threats being targeted, and at what point do disruptions sow doubt? Doubt seems to be one of the most dangerous things in an American democracy, it seems, certainly given the last election cycle.
And one more state I want to show you. This one, we kind of wondered what these numbers were going to look like. Iowa, only 11% of the vote counted, but there was that poll, the Des Moines Register reporting it on Saturday, and said they felt that poll was a credible one, which showed that Kamala Harris was actually doing very well in Iowa, which if this were...
That is the Ann Seltzer poll that had her up by 3 in Iowa going into the election. That was the prediction. A lot of these polls are created in an effort to propagandize and to set the stage. So, for example, if I'm going to pre-frame something, let's just imagine I'm a Democrat, thus I'm more likely to cheat. And I'm planning on this. I want the media to write the polls such that the public can expect the outcome to come to where we are, to what we predicted, and thus giving us the maneuverability to say, hey, who can disbelieve this while we hide the evidence? Similarly, it generates hopium amongst Kamala voters and amongst those who want to be associated with the winning side for whatever frailty they have as human beings. They don't vote based on conscience, but they want to be the winner. And thus it does skew a couple people in that direction as well. But essentially the poll is propaganda.
To hold or anything close to this, 5 days ago, nobody in Iowa expected that Kamala Harris could possibly win that state. So we have a lot of math
Because
to do.
it's all
I'm not going
lies.
to do math live on the air. It's the worst, my worst skill. But unconventional things may be happening.
You're Indian. I'd imagine that math would be your forte.
That's really, really interesting. And the bump you're seeing there for Kamala Harris, nothing unconventional about that. That bump is because of New York. What state are you thinking about now, or what demographic are you thinking about?
I keep thinking about women. First of all, I'm thinking about them all, and still feeling, hopeful because it's early and we've got blue wall states. But I think that what we're seeing is a gender divide playing out in what's happening right now in this election. The same thing we saw with that Iowa poll. No one was even having conversations about Iowa or Kansas, right? And now you're seeing some change there. And when you look at what's been happening, I'm telling you that women are really frustrated that Donald Trump has gone around bragging about how he's essentially created a nationwide, or attempting to create a nationwide ban on abortion by getting rid of Roe. And it's
false, false, false. Donald Trump specifically said that he would veto any national abortion ban that would cross his desk. False, lies, lies, lies. But what else would you expect from the left? All they do is lie to amplify the fear in mentally ill people who don't follow this stuff. That's your job, Aisha. I hope you feel good about yourself.
Really going to play out with women.
I do think, Kevin, I want to talk to you about momentum, but the first place where we need to go to talk about momentum is to West Palm Beach, Florida, and Chris Reyes at Trump headquarters.
What I will tell you is that they're getting louder as more states are being called for Donald Trump. There's a lot more cheering happening.
The momentum conversation. What are your colleagues and friends in the party saying about that right now?
Yeah, they're all pretty excited right now. I think
lots can change. But if that were to hold, and I'm not going to give Minnesota's at less than 1%, so let's just say that that's blue. I'm just looking at this, and if Republicans were to take Arizona, as I think the numbers have, that would lead Nevada, right? That would lead, my numbers here would say, if that holds, 269 for Democrats, 263 for Republicans, plus with 6 in Nevada as the wild card.
Not 269.
That would be a tie.
No, Paul.
That
It
would
is
be a
way
tie.
too early to have the tie conversation.
But that's right there, right now. Let's not even go there because that would be
you did.
nuts, right? Can you imagine?
And at the end of the day, what Democrats are known for is the ground game.
Well, we were expecting a good night for Donald Trump. This is the first time in the 3 elections that he's ever been even or even ahead in the polling on election night. He's outperformed his polls anywhere from 5 to 10% historically. So if that trend continues, we're not looking at just victory, we're looking at a wipeout.
A wipeout when the polls are showing things are so close. I mean, there's still a lot of big states to be called. It's looking good for you in Georgia and North Carolina, no question. But a wipeout is pretty confident.
I think that we are going to have a statistical tie in the popular vote, and Trump will receive more electoral college votes than he received in 2016. The fact is that the Democrats are not actually whipped up in this fever pitch that got them over the line in 2020. At the end of the day, I believe that Americans simply are not buying the rhetoric of authoritarianism because it didn't happen last term. It's not going to happen this term. And so I'm thinking that we are going to have a very strong night. And I am expecting to carry the popular vote. And then you look at Kamala Harris, who runs away from interviews and has to go do an SNL skit, right? Whose first interview as the nominee, she needed Tim Walz to hold her hand and protect her. That's not inspiring to anybody, least of all anybody that wants to achieve anything.
Okay.
Well, you know how to pick them, David. Isaac is fantastic. And with his analysis there of a wipeout, I mean, maybe, Ian?
Well, I
Well,
mean,
he just said he's going to go have another drink, so we'll see.
Okay, that perspective is
He's
very
drunk.
important.
That's the only
Thank
way
you.
he could have said
fantastic
anything
is
like
an
that.
interesting word, maybe a euphemism, but through the night, he may be worth going back to over and over
I mean,
again.
just for the heck of it, potentially, yeah.
Let's look at the blue
Just
wall.
for the heck of
Remember
it,
at the
just to
beginning
see
of the
how
night, we
wrong he
said
was.
that Kamala Harris could win if she could hold the 3 states of the blue wall. Wisconsin, she is in the lead now. Earlier when we showed it to you, Donald Trump had the early lead. A quarter of the votes counted there, and every indication is Wisconsin is going to be close, so we'll be coming back to this. Michigan, pretty big lead, but a pretty small count at this point, 14%. This is Pennsylvania, the one that has 19 electoral college votes, and a big lead for her, but again, only 1/3 of the votes have been counted there. And let's quickly take one more look at Wisconsin. That has flipped back, as you can see, still close and still just 26% of the vote counted there.
That sounds nice to
So
me.
interesting. All right.
Hi, Canada. My hope for America is that we can be as good at hockey as you guys are.
Congratulations, Canada's one contribution to world culture. Hockey and toothlessness as a result. Maybe maple syrup, which, by the way, probably adds to the toothlessness with all the sugar.
Well, that will never happen, but bless you for thinking that. Welcome back. I want to draw your attention to the results bar at the bottom of the screen. 162 electoral votes for Donald Trump, 81 for Kamala Harris. There may not be any surprises in the raw numbers there, but the leanings, there seem to be some antacid-inducing moments in some of those, certainly at Harris headquarters, where Katie Simpson is right now. I want to give you a live look at what is happening at Harris headquarters. It was a dance party there earlier. It doesn't, from this perspective, it doesn't really look like that now. Or maybe I'm wrong, Katie.
Oh no, Adrian, the vibe has completely changed. About an hour and a half ago, there were dance lines. The DJ was spinning tunes. The DJ has just picked up the tunes again. But for a while there, they were showing some of the American news coverage with some of the projections taking place. I think she's got it, but I don't trust my gut anymore. No one trusts their gut after what happened in 2016. The mood here, it has really shifted. It has changed. The way that tonight was really being described by Democrats here in Washington, it was not cautious optimism, but nauseous optimism. They didn't want to get ahead of themselves. They knew that this race was going to be close, and they were sort of on an edge. It's sort of making people not feel very good, making them feel very anxious. And now, instead of that nauseous optimism, perhaps we're shifting just into a moment for Democrats, for people at this party, a little bit of just straight up nausea.
Clean up the vomit off the floor.
Right. Okay, Katie Simpson and Howard.
That Madison Square Garden rally was very distasteful for some people.
Famously.
Only for those who framed it as racist and misogynistic and anti-Puerto Rican, as a comedian who they're trying to blame Donald Trump as actually saying it, focused on the actual trash problem that Puerto Rico has, the garbage that is overfilling from the landfill. But of course, all the left does is try to say that Trump called Puerto Ricans garbage, and therefore every single Latino is going to vote against Trump, as if they vote in one unified block, as if Puerto Ricans don't have a brain and can see through the shenanigans that they were perpetrating.
Everybody in his inner circle says he's unfit for office, that he's a menace to the country.
Former inner circle.
Former inner circle.
Yeah.
But yeah, good point. But like, what do you make of that? It's consistent from them.
Is that polite society, as you say, as well as the economic,
the blob.
behemoths of our world, really, right? When you talk about Fortune 500 companies, they all see the same thing. And it's that the erraticness that I guess some Republicans have decided to stomach and say, oh, his bark isn't, that bad, is actually really, really bad for the economy, which is why pretty much every...
I'm so glad that under the president, where the economy grew the most and was the best up into COVID, that you and your economic experts are telling us that he's bad for the economy. Could this be propaganda? Could it? Could it? You guys decide. Leave it in the comments.
Major economist has said that these threats of these tariffs are going to drive up inflation and be horrible for Americans and, everybody, period. And I think that, that's real. So the thing about...
And then Pennsylvania is the big one that both Trump and Harris really want to win, have put a lot of money and time in Pennsylvania. There's so much suspense about Pennsylvania. Our computer is only slowly going to it. There we go. Finally, Pennsylvania, 44% of the votes counted there. And look how close that is. 0.1 of a percentage point is the margin right now. But so much depends in Pennsylvania on where those uncounted votes are. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Yikes. All right.
It is, wow. Perhaps the polls will be right at the end of the day, that this is very, very close. I mean, we spent 2 election cycles talking about how the polls were off. They might not be off at this point. Again, in terms of confirmed states,
They were off.
Nothing is a surprise. But as you've been listening to Ian talk at this point, it's the states where it's leaning. That's where some of the surprises are. And
I met people, Democrats going back to 2016, who were not ready to have, in the 21st century, in the most modern country in the history of the world, who weren't ready for a woman to be president. I met somebody last week in Washington, a Democrat from Texas, who said her husband, black woman, who said her husband was drifting away because he couldn't envision a woman as commander-in-chief. All these, everybody.
Well, I could actually vote for Tulsi Gabbard, believe it or not. But to vote for a person that can't complete a sentence, that wants to be unburdened by what has been, yeah, I'm not sure that I want such a person leading our nation. Have you seen the clip of her and J.D. Vance in contrast to each other discussing artificial intelligence? Such a huge, vast difference between the intellects of the two people. And it has nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman or her color of skin. It's just stating an observation that she was unfit and a DEI candidate by every single definition of the word.
He has their own anecdotes. And I don't, is that a factor here, I wonder? I don't know. Is it? What do you think?
I don't know. We know that it was for Hillary Clinton. I mean, we actually have results on that one.
It's not because she's a horrible candidate also, who was a warmonger and would have destroyed the world.
One of the things that we're not talking
Led us
about
into many wars.
is the other races that are happening in some of these states and how they might play out. I'm watching Wisconsin to see how Senator Tammy Baldwin is doing.
And just on Senate, too, it's worth noting, if it's a Trump White House and if the Senate goes Republican, not to get too far ahead of our skis.
When it goes Republican.
Say that?
When it goes Republican.
You're seeing a bump again, just for Kamala Harris. That is Colorado that has just come in. Again, not a surprise there.
I guess when you're at high elevation, the number of brain cells that you have lessens significantly, thus justifying you voting for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, Adrian, as these results come in, a little disappointment by Democrats here, seeing Kamala Harris seeming to lose a bit of support, slipping support in Georgia and North Carolina, which makes winning Pennsylvania for the Harris camp all the more critical. So they're feeling upbeat. One of the networks called Colorado, which gave them some optimism, but they're really watching carefully these slow results trickling in across Pennsylvania. As we're going to get John to just pan over here because the crowd is filling up here after polls close. This party is getting underway. There's pizza, there's yingling flowing. We're in Pennsylvania, of course, but of course there's optimism and anxiety. Also, but at this point, there is some optimism here, cautious optimism on the results Democrats are seeing tonight in Pennsylvania.
All right, Richard, thank you. I think probably your cautious optimism will probably suggest Katie Simpson's characterization of nauseous optimism. What she heard from Democrats is potentially more apt.
I need to find a word that rhymes with nauseous and cautious.
I know.
I just can't do it off the top of
We'll work on that.
You're not Eminem. We have some time to work on that. Let's look at Pennsylvania. Richard was talking about those numbers, and there you see a lead for Donald Trump. But listen, I've got to bring your attention the upper right-hand corner of our board there. 50% of the expected votes counted. So lots of room
Trump's
there.
leading.
And we'll dig in a little deeper to see where the votes have been counted so far in Pennsylvania. So lots of potential for change there. There are some good signs, and I'm sure the Democrats are desperately seeking good signs right now. Some good signs right now in Arizona.
What a thin margin, though.
Yep.
Of time with Pennsylvania, a couple things. Certainly they are counting through the night. That's not what they did last time. And at 12:01 a.m., we will get a sense from Pennsylvania in terms of how many mail-in ballots there are left to count. So that will give us a sense of a margin, if you will, of what's left to come. That certainly was not the case in 2020, so that led to some of the confusion, but there should be a better understanding of the numbers. But so Aisha, just curious, are you talking with people on the ground in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, any of those blue wall states?
So Pennsylvania in particular, we are going back and forth and biting our nails. But there's, Pennsylvania, it's interesting because a lot of work has been done there. You see that the Harris campaign invested really heavily in trying to...
the money that's
There's so much money that's gone there. And you also have a really popular governor there in Josh Shapiro. Very popular all across.
Why wasn't he on the ticket? Why did you all choose Tim Walz? Oh, wait, I know why. Because Josh Shapiro is Jewish. Yet all the Republicans are the racist ones, right?
The state. And so how this is playing out is really interesting right now. And you can see those pockets of where the investment has happened on both sides. On both sides.
Well, so there's the long game and then there's the short game of betting. And I know that while we're looking at some of these numbers, you're also looking at the betting odds, right?
Yeah, and in the last 45 minutes, they have shot way up to between 85 and 90% in all of the different...
Don't listen to where the money is going. We still have hope. We outspent Donald Trump by $1 billion. That should secure victory. Plus, we've got the late night shenanigans of the increased pre-signed ballots without signature verification going to the polls. So we can't wait for the red mirage to take place.
Various markets, polymarketing. If he doesn't win tonight or tomorrow, there's going to be a whole lot of people that think something went very wrong, and that's what I'm afraid of. I don't. We want a clean result. We hope that the margin is big enough on either side. But where it is right now, the public believes he's going to win.
Okay, so a couple things about that. I think everyone's heard Donald Trump's too big to rig. Make it too big to rig. I think that's a line that both campaigns would want to hang on to.
Yeah.
But in every election cycle, we have this conversation with people about hang on to your hats about the first results you see because they change through the night. Has that not landed for people, do you think?
To some extent, but a lot of those rules have been changed where that red mirage doesn't exactly work that way anymore.
Can't cheat
Donald
this
Trump
time,
has
y'all.
never, ever claimed defeat around anything, even as a guy who has filed bankruptcy.
You don't claim defeat. You admit defeat. I claim defeat. Wait, that doesn't sound good. Okay, I admit defeat.
6 times, right, who has been held liable for sexual assault. Like, he has never claimed defeat. So there isn't a margin.
As a convicted felon.
Right, he's a convicted felon,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
So
A convicted felon with the bogus charges that were made up, misdemeanors that were upgraded to felonies, 34 counts of the same crime that famed lawyer Alan Dershowitz, who, by the way, was the liberal, says was the worst case that he's ever seen in 65 years of practicing law.
there isn't, the thing that makes me fearful, and in fact, people are texting me right now saying, oh my God, I'm scared to death
fear.
what if Donald Trump wins, not simply because of the politics of it, because of the fear of the violence in the streets around it, especially for those of us who are Black and brown people. And
oh yeah, because we're going to target you. I mean, the moment that Donald Trump wins, that gives us permission to go after the brown and Black people. Totally. I mean, unlike when Black Lives Matter and Antifa actually did target like white-owned businesses during the summer of love that she framed it as.
United States, right? We watched January 6th. We know that there's an incitement of violence because you don't get your way. And Donald Trump has spent the entire election convincing people that the game is rigged before anybody even started voting, right? His entire, brouhaha has been, oh, well, they're cheating, right? They're cheating. They're going to cheat. We're going to have lawyers there to make sure that they're not cheating. And so that is something I, appreciate the way that you say that there are a lot of people who believe that he's going to win. And when we talk about the betting odds and the belief, that's the thing that makes those of us who actually broker in like real facts and data concerned.
Oh yeah, that's all you do.
Because people's attitudes and opinions about what they believe that are based in nothing other than someone.
Believe in quotes. We believe he's going to win. believe, in quotes, not before our red mirage plan that we have.
Attitude and lies about something being rigged that aren't really true end up having like really fatal consequences for a lot of minorities in the United States, because
It's
it
all about
incites
the
people to
minorities,
take
right?
their attitudes about what they think should have been and go out and act upon them even though they're not reality. And so I would hope that
Everything's
if
racism.
in fact this night ends and it's unclear what's going on, that the former president would say it's still unclear about what's going on. We're waiting for everybody to finish counting, and not actually incite something other than what the numbers are telling us.
Okay, well, let's...
Yeah, Adrian, you know,
pays her
it's
for her
really
opinion?
too close to call here, of course. Only about 20% of the vote is in Michigan, and it's very, very tight, as was expected. But, you know, I've been canvassing the room a little bit, and I think the nerves are starting to rise a bit. Claire, how are you feeling right now, be honest?
I am starting to feel a little bit nervous. You know, when I walked in here earlier today, I was feeling super excited.
Okay, tell me, leave it in the comments. Does she not give you the vibe of a rich, white, liberal woman, leftist maybe, who takes Xanax and drinks copious amounts of wine? Let me know what you guys think. Let me know your opinion of her, because you can just tell sometimes by somebody's vibe, the way that they express themselves, who they are very instantly. That's what the vibe I get.
The prospect of having the first woman president is just kind of amazing to me, and I was thrilled about that. Over the last 30 minutes or so, I will say I've been seeing some of the stuff on TV. I'm getting some texts from friends, and starting to feel a little bit anxious, hoping that is not granted or warranted.
What's making you feel anxious?
It's completely warranted.
Just, I guess, getting texts
The results,
from friends.
maybe?
They're a little nervous. It seems like races are becoming closer and closer. In Michigan, obviously, I've been working here. And don't like what I'm seeing. To me, it feels like this should be a slam dunk. I knew it was going to be close, but was optimistic that we were going to really pull ahead. So I am a little worried, if I'm being honest.
And if Kamala Harris does not pull it off?
Honestly, I don't really even have words for that right now. I will be devastated. I probably will cry. It will be really hard for me to understand, honestly. I really hope that does not become the reality, and I'm still crossing my fingers and optimistic here, but I don't really want to consider that as a possibility right now, to be honest.
Okay, I will let you go and not put you through more misery, but thank you so much for talking to me. It is, of course, still early. These battleground states are still very much in play, but I think Claire's opinion is being reflected around the room, that they're just not as sure as they were earlier in the evening that these states are going to
continue to
in
go
fact
down
stay
that
with
confidence
the
level,
Democrats.
isn't it?
And you have some more information about the blue wall. Is it still a blue wall?
Yeah, well, I mean, it keeps
question.
going back and forth. It depends on kind of which
should rename
5-minute
it.
increment you're
I
looking at.
suggest red
Before I
wall.
show you results, I want you to consider this. As we look at two paths for victory, one for Trump, right now it looks like if he wins Pennsylvania, he will win the White House. For Kamala Harris, it looks like she needs all three of the states in the blue wall. So right now, Donald Trump is looking pretty good when it comes to his path to the White House. Kamala Harris is, definitely not leading in the blue wall states that she needs right now.
That's because it's a red
And remember
wall.
the optimism for Democrats about Iowa earlier in the evening, and that poll that came out on the weekend? Well, Donald Trump is picking up the Electoral College votes in Iowa.
That's because that poll was paid for. You want to get people on your side. It was pure propaganda. These are push polls. They are meant to move people in one direction. Everything from those who want to be associated with winners to fundraising for candidates. You have these great polls. People want to give you more money to ensure victory or to switch sides to you. That's why they're propagandistic polls. There are very few polls that are on the up and up. Very few.
There was some question about whether that would happen. Also, but again, the blue wall is critical to Kamala Harris. Pennsylvania is critical to Donald Trump. The one prediction we've been absolutely right about is really close.
I knew that's where you were going to go.
And even going back to 2020, and after all the the fraud this, fraud that, and then there was never any evidence really at all, and yet people seem still willing to take his word, theoretically, that it was, the fix was in. Like that's the part that I don't understand.
The fix was absolutely in. You have intelligence agencies that are directly supporting one candidate rather than being neutral. It's almost treasonous how the 51 former intelligence officials knowingly said that the Hunter Biden laptop held all the earmarks of Russian disinformation, essentially calling it such, using weasel words, and how they got the social media companies to suppress it by using the levers of power, that they would go after them, that they would destroy them. This is fascism. This is actual fascism by the government. So yeah, the fix was in 2020, even if you are correct, and I truly doubt it, that those calling Donald Trump Hitler would not engage in manipulating the actual tallies of the vote
in a system that would seem to be working.
Well, okay, well, it might not have been rigged at the ballot box, but they did suppress a laptop that would have changed votes. We know that. They did change voting rules all over the place.
It's not true. Let's not spread misinformation on air. That's not true.
It's absolutely true.
Of course it is.
We have public polling for it.
That's not true, which is why there's been no litigation around it and no one's been held liable for that. There's been absolutely no.
I'm talking about a media narrative story. I'm not talking about actually rigging of an election. That some of the states have taken action. Georgia's fixed up, their system a bit.
Pure partisan,
and just do that in your state.
She calls herself.
Exactly. The question that you're asking is one that I've been catching a lot of heat for answering on air, and we've been talking about this in the last week or two. You're talking about the propaganda campaign and the playbook of Trump. This is not new. This is not so.
The propaganda comes from the leftists, those who say that Trump said that it was going to be a bloodbath if he doesn't win the election. When he's talking about the auto industry and economics, they try to frame it as violence, that say that Donald Trump said that there were fine people on both sides, when he squarely immediately said, and I don't mean the white nationalists or the neo-Nazis because they should be condemned totally. These people are just liars. They're trying to pin the propaganda on Donald Trump, who probably is the most honest politician of the last 100 years.
This is directly out of Hitler's playbook.
Oh,
this is
there
out
you
of
go.
An autocrat.
Keep calling him that. That's going to do wonders for America.
Way to, the things that Trump has done masterfully, frankly, is to get the entire, to get a big
compliment,
part of the population to believe that the game is rigged and to sow distrust in public institutions and the free press. That is a tried and true playbook that we have seen time and time before that has resulted in really disastrous things for society. And that is what's working. And so it's actually quite simple. When you tell a big enough lie over and over and over, people are going to believe it. Even when folks around him like Rudy Giuliani and others have literally been found liable for telling those lies that weren't true. The public still believes it. And the whole goal was to erode.
The same way that Donald Trump was found liable for claiming that his assets were much greater than they were, and that Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million, when in fact I would pay $20 million for it right now, and many other people would pay hundreds of millions for it. Like that.
Trust.
Sorry for the interruption.
In our public institutions, and it's working.
Fake
and
news.
If anything, that's what fake news. Donald Trump has done that really well. Can't argue with that.
Yeah,
right?
it is fake news.
And that's sad. That's sad.
I just want to interrupt for a second. Two things. 30 cases of election fraud were found completely without merit. Sometimes you hear the argument from some Republicans that, the cases didn't go anywhere because there wasn't standing. But
correct.
At least 30 cases were heard and were thrown out because of a lack of evidence.
Standing.
I think that's been adjudicated.
Not because of evidence, because
it's just
standing.
so hard to get it out of people's head, right? That narrative sticks.
But there is a broad, going back to the story, a broad erosion in people's belief in democracy around the world. Like, this is not just in the United States.
Did you know that the Blob got the Romanian election results thrown out because the wrong party won, and this was this year or at the end of 2024? Do you know that? Most people don't. But when you talk about losing faith into democracy, democracy only works if you elect the correct people. And they're threatening to do the same in Germany in the upcoming elections, which is something that J.D. Vance highlighted the other day in his speech to the Europeans.
This is happening in this country as well. And there is an attempt to sort of point at institutions and create distrust. And
when we allow ourselves to have a public discourse that suggests that both sides are playing a dirty game, it's doing what we're talking about. It's eroding public trust. It's just not truthful.
I'm just saying, get ahead of it.
It's not truthful.
Be good
It's
for
nothing to
unity.
get ahead of.
Nobody's saying that. Nobody thinks that. So you know what I mean? I don't know what you're getting ahead of.
Right.
There's one party that stormed the Capitol, incited people to storm
Which
the
was
Capitol.
really bad, yeah.
And the other party didn't.
I hope the next.
I bet you that was a op by the FBI. You notice the fact that they did not have enough security there, despite the fact that Donald Trump actually requested more presence of forces that would have repelled the attack on the Capitol, the riot. Meanwhile, Antifa in 2020 attacked the White House, tried to burn down guard posts in St. John's Church, and injured many, many Secret Service. But was any attention paid by the press to that? Negative. Meanwhile, the Summer of Love took place and they burned down the entire cities almost. So, you just see the double standard in terms of what they're portraying and which party is actually advocating violence. It's actually one party, and that would be the Democrats. I'm not defending January 6th, but believe me, I think that it was a psyop and that it was intended to take place so that Donald Trump would never again rise to power and they would have leverage against him and to crack down on the whole MAGA movement.
Listen, let's get through tonight. If I may.
And I'm just going to say that this is not a dancing crowd. There's no DJ here, but that doesn't mean that they're not happy, optimistic, and hopeful. They're just showing it in other ways. In fact, I think this is more of a merch crowd, which is why you see the sea of red hats. This crowd throughout the night, they haven't really had much reason to be nervous or anxious. Throughout the night, as they're showing results from the different channels from the U.S. networks on the two big screens right next to the podium, Donald Trump has been in the lead and has had a sizable lead throughout the night. So now this crowd is starting to dance, Adrienne. This is the first time that we've seen dancing.
But that YMCA has been burned into people's brains now as Donald Trump's walk-on music is quite a thing.
That video montage of Donald Trump, I'm not going to try to do it, that dance that Donald Trump does.
So I promise you, Chris, that if we see any indication that the motorcade is on the move, we'll let you know. But just so people know, if it's on the move, let's hope it's not to claim victory early, because this isn't over yet. This has not yet been determined. Some states are still too close to call, even though they are currently leaning in a particular direction. And people don't soon forget that it was in 2020 that when Donald Trump claimed victory early, and that contributed to a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the accusations that something was up with that election, when in fact nothing was up with that election. He lost. I'm going to go ahead now. It's getting narrow for certainly Kamala Harris. What's it looking like for Donald Trump?
Well, he has multiple paths to victory right now. So they begin with two southern swing states that he's been doing really well in all evening. Georgia, he maintains a lead with 90% now of the vote counted. North Carolina, he's also been leading throughout the evening, and he continues to lead with 85% of the vote counted. So if he were to hold Georgia and North Carolina, then all he has to do is win Pennsylvania to go to the White House. He maintains the lead in Pennsylvania, but as I mentioned a few minutes ago, still a third of the votes to be counted, and we may see some changes there, though it is a pretty solid lead for Donald Trump there. But as of right now, a few paths for Donald Trump to the White House, whereas Kamala Harris has fewer.
Yeah, certainly momentum seems to be on his side. And while you were out warming up your tea, you may notice that the results bar has moved a little bit. A bit of a bump up there for Donald Trump, certainly a bump for Kamala Harris. I'm just checking out. That's California going for Kamala Harris, though. Nauseous optimism turning, as you just...
As an ex-Californian, I apologize for my state.
Said, into waves of nausea. What's happening there now?
Yeah, Adrian, if we can describe the start of this night as having the vibe of a wedding, it is slowly morphing into what feels more closer to possibly a funeral. It's not there yet. It's not there yet. But
Bring
the
out the
vibe
corpse
has
of the Democrat
shifted
Party that's
dramatically.
deserved it
People were
after all the
dancing.
ills
It
that
looked
they've
like a
created for the
bar.
nation.
Everyone was super excited. So many people were wearing pink. A representative of Kamala Harris's sorority, the sorority she belonged to here. There are moments where there are, surges of cheering. When California was projected for Kamala Harris, there was a very huge applause there. Every time they come to the CNN reporter who's broadcasting live, the crowd gets very, very excited. But what we are seeing here is you're seeing staff really upset. I saw one member of the Harris Walls team sort of sitting, other staff members rubbing her back, people sitting looking anxious in the crowd. Instead of the dancing, the excitement, the cheers, there had been a real sense that things were going to break for Kamala Harris. No one wanted to get too ahead of themselves, but in the days leading up to this moment, there was a real sense of optimism, a real sense of hope. But we are... One thing we're sort of getting from the American networks is that apparently Jen O'Malley-Dillon, who has connections to Canada, has given some sort of campaign note update to staffers. And we were just hearing this reported by CNN at this time. They are not expecting things to be settled tonight. And perhaps that's the message that is going to be delivered by the Harris campaign, at least at this moment, that we understand. Things are very fluid, Adrian. Things could change, and that's something that we always, keep in mind when we are doing these live election broadcasts. Again, this is not the night the Harris campaign had envisioned. Although things are nowhere near finished at this point in time, the excitement, the hope, the energy, it has really shifted. It is incredibly nervous. Not going to say it's...
You mean those mosquito leftists don't get to continue to destroy the nation and suck out all the decency from America? So to employ their leftist Marxist policies? Oh, too bad.
Quite at that level where, it went from a wedding to more of a funeral, but it's certainly not feeling very good in this moment at this headquarters.
Okay.
Talk about that nauseous optimism that we've heard Democrats having. Yes. You told me you feel fine, and it's so tight right now here in North Carolina. Why do you feel fine?
Well, because I've been, for the last couple of weeks, on the ground, being able to work with this community. I am actually not from this state or this city, but I've been welcomed with open arms and a very warm energy by the city. And being here, talking to the people, being on the ground with the community, everyone here is united. Everyone here is together and working strong.
This is the politically correct person that would take offense at any joke that was slightly off color that you would tell. This is the inverse of somebody that you would want to hang out with for any period of time. Again, this is just the immediate vibe that somebody can generate by hearing and looking at somebody talk for just a few seconds. Leave it in the comment section if you agree.
Working hard, and I think we know that we put it all on the table, and that we know we're comforted by the fact that we've put in those efforts.
What
and
a soy
despite
boy.
all the craziness and just how elections usually go, we've been working hard. And I think right now I'm letting that comfort me. I'm writing on that comfort of knowing that I put my all onto the table, and I would just kind of wait for the results.
And I'm just you don't feel nervous or apprehensive in any way?
You know what? After maybe a couple of hours, maybe so. But right now, it's just so fresh.
My Xanax prevents me
I was just
from
now
feeling.
coming back a couple hours ago from a polling site where I was handing out pan dulce to the voters and the volunteers that were there.
I'm
So
pretty
it's
sure
just
that's
so
illegal,
fresh.
by the way.
It's not a time to be panicking.
You don't
Now
get
is not
to
a
hand
time
out
to be
gifts to
worried
voters
about
that are polling
the results,
place.
because clearly
Arrest
we
him.
still can't call anything. It's still not going to be decided for another couple of hours. So right now we just kind of bathe in this work that we put together, all this foundation that we've built.
The number 270
Mierda.
winning the White
Bathe in the
House.
mierda.
That's where they're sitting right now. It is inching closer and closer. And at the bottom of your screen, that's where the popular vote sits. Now, that is interesting. Keep an eye on the popular vote. 52.4% for Donald Trump, 46.3% for Kamala Harris. Paul Hunter, should those trends last, what story does that tell you?
Well,
a good one.
Who said Democrats
Good
are
story.
always nervous. Like they can't accept that things might roll their way. And I wonder what your degree of nauseousness is right now, and nervousness.
I think that, you know, the nauseous nervousness is because Democrats leave it all in the field. I mean, this is the thing, is that the ground game, and I'll, you know, constantly repeat, despite the outcome of whatever may end up happening tonight, this has been the most flawlessly executed campaign in modern history.
And it started the first time that Kamala Harris was able to complete a sentence.
Especially given how truncated it was. Democrats doubled down.
You know, you throw your presidential candidate who got all the primary votes by virtue of the fact that they disallowed Robert F. Kennedy to run in terms of Joe Biden. And then you put the dementia patient on stage and he proves to the nation what I've been saying since 2019. And then you install your DEI candidate and tell everybody that she must vote, they must vote for her because she's a woman and she's black and she's joy. And that constitutes a flawlessly run campaign. Obviously not.
And invest hard in the ground game where it matters, and have boots on the ground, have enthusiasm, and get people motivated to move, right? Leave it all on turf. Do the hard work. And it is so anxiety provoking when sometimes that's not enough. When you play the game really well, but you still don't win because that's not enough. And have this idea of, you know, we're not going back, which is essentially a progressive narrative of inclusion and bringing everybody with us. And then you have this other idea of like, let's make America great and go backwards, where America, you know, essentially the power structure in America was, you know, made up mostly of a certain kind of person, right? There was a white.
Ooh, now we're talking about racism again. A certain type of person. Why don't you just say it like you did on that CNN panel, that you don't want to be told what to do by a white person? Because how dare somebody who's not of extra melanin have an idea.
Power element to that. And you're seeing that play out in these elections too. And so I do think that we're at a tipping point where it's going to be like really, really tight for a while, and it's going to be even deeper struggle. And I would say that the Democrats
we should move back towards
have
merit.
a lot more exhaustion around it and anxiety because we put so much into it tactically. We're not just sitting around talking trash.
Because all that the Republicans did was sit around and talk trash. That is the only thing that they did. And Democrats, as your platitude stated, left it all out on the field. But Republicans did absolutely nothing. And it's only because of racism and misogyny that we elected Donald Trump.
About it. We're actually out there doing it. I think also, I mean, then I'll speak for myself, and certainly not all Democrats, but there's also something to a little bit of pride in that, and that when you lose, we don't need to storm the Capitol because we know we put it on the line and we did
like you did in
work.
2016.
And sometimes it's
all
not
the
enough,
riots,
but you do the work, right? We don't need
Summer
to
of
go and
Love.
like try to steal it.
Yeah, and again,
29th,
I mean,
when
not to sound like a
you guys
broken
burned
record,
down
we're
the
not there
guard
yet.
posts.
Like we're writing a story that hasn't finished yet. The bump you're seeing on the, I just want to check, the bump you're seeing on the results board there, that's Oregon for Kamala Harris.
But listen, I don't disagree that if Harris is not victorious, that there will be a lot of finger blaming, and there will be a lot of pointing of those fingers at Joe Biden. She's encouraging the
It's all
staff
Joe
to
Biden's
get
fault.
a good night's rest because the fight continues tomorrow and probably throughout the week.
It's so funny to me that they blame Joe Biden when the entire media apparatus was telling us that he was fit as a fiddle, sharp as a tack, the best Joe Biden that they've ever seen. And when people brought about video clips of Joe Biden demonstrating what is clearly dementia, they called them cheap fakes. Just remember that. They called videos, actual reality of Joe Biden exhibiting mental decline as cheap fakes. And just remember that going forward when they try to denigrate Trump for originally calling the media to be fake news. That's all that it is. It is just a propaganda arm of the Democrat machine.
Each of these states, but I think it's not over yet, obviously.
Not over yet.
But, you know, there was some hope that perhaps one of the early called states like North Carolina and Georgia would go in Harris's direction. We don't know if that's going to happen. It does not look likely. But again, it's not over yet.
when you
the path to victory
Keep
for
coping.
Harris right now is that blue wall, and each of those states is very, very, very close. The issue here is former President Trump has really made inroads with Hispanic voters nationally, but specifically in the state of Pennsylvania.
So there are still paths there, but right now, Donald Trump and the people who support Donald Trump must be feeling pretty good.
I bet.
Yep.
But I feel like I vote for policy over people, and none of Kamala's policies really resonate with me at all.
So was Roe versus Wade, reproductive freedom, and abortion rights? Why did that not resonate with you? Did that not resonate? There's a lot of young women here. Why?
You'll note the fact that this woman is on the attractive side of the bell curve. You don't really see that amongst the leftists, for example, on the CBC panel in full makeup, by the way.
Why do you think they didn't get the vote pushing that issue?
I've been pro-life my whole life, and I feel like that pro-life is pro-woman. I think that it's a really easy lie that Democrats tell young women that abortion is healthcare. It's not. It's not reproductive rights. Reproductive means bringing children into the world, and that's the opposite of what abortion does. And I think the abortion industry, it's just a lie. It's not.
And in the event, it turns out that this is one of those strange situations where and you're looking at the popular vote right now, he manages to secure the popular vote, but not get the Electoral College. I mean, we've seen that very few times. Maybe this raises the question again, because both parties would have been hurt by that phenomenon. Maybe eventually there's a conversation in the United States about, is this really the right way?
There's been a conversation.
Yes, it is.
I know, good luck.
Anytime that you have pure democracy, it ends in utter failure. And the founders of this country were very much aware of that. For example, today, we could institute slavery if we 50.1% of the vote in a pure democracy. Aisha, how you feel about that as you advocate pure democracy?
Good luck can change things, but there's no incentive to change a system if it always works in your favor, right? But in the event it doesn't. He gets the popular vote, but not the Electoral College, and the path to that is very, very narrow. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe it becomes a discussion, but who starts that?
He also,
apparently. Begin.
I'm going.
And I asked her, how are you feeling about these results for Trump? And she also said, cautiously optimistic. But Adrian, she had a smile on her face and a little bit of a twinkle in her eye.
Oh, I suspect there are quite a few of those smiles on faces and twinkles in eyes. We will see more of them as the night goes on, no doubt. Just not sure at which watch party.
You know which
it is not
watch
over
party.
Yet. There is momentum, certainly, for Donald Trump. He appears to be leading in 6 of the 7 swing states, but there are so many votes yet to count. Some of them will take us deep into the night, potentially into the next few days. Nothing is over yet, but everyone is watching and wondering if this is leading. Certainly, it looks like it could be leading towards a Donald Trump victory. You're in D.C. today, and I'm curious, what's going through your head right now? What are the big surprises for you, if there are any?
I did think that this would be a stronger night for Kamala Harris than it's so far showing up to be. But I'm thinking more about the slightly more distant future, what it would mean if Donald Trump does return to the presidency. I think there may have been a kind of, my generation of person tended to assume Americans will always do the right thing when the chips are down. And maybe after so many times of doing the right thing in difficult circumstances, maybe the odds are just due for the Americans to do the wrong thing.
Are you calling for an insurrection against a duly elected president? You clown, you utter buffoon, you rhino who has propagandized and lied against Donald Trump in order to protect the status quo, USAID, and all the money pouring in, no doubt, into your pockets and your friends?
Right circumstances, not to join the Allies in 1940, not to win the Civil War, but for the wrong side to lose for once. Maybe it was their turn.
Okay. David Frum, good to talk to you. Thank you, David.
He looks sick.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, David.
Networks have made a projection, which means CBC News is now ready to make a call. And that is that Donald Trump will win North Carolina, and it's 16 electoral votes,
YMCA.
pushing him closer to winning the 2024 election. Donald Trump.
So, I mean, there is no sense at all that there are nerves in this crowd. This is a very happy crowd, very enthusiastic, and they're getting louder by the minute.
Well, certainly the wind out of the sails of the party here. And I want to bring in the Deputy Executive Director of the Mecklenburg Democratic Party.
I think there's still a path to victory for the vice president. We still see a
Soy
path
boy
to the
alert.
White House. Obviously, it doesn't run through North Carolina anymore. But that path is certainly narrowing.
And so there you go, Adrian, North Carolina, and it's 16 Electoral College.
There is absolutely no testosterone left on the Democrat side of the aisle. It is just feminized men and their accompanying liberal, unhappy women who drink too much wine and take Xanax. Plus all the black minorities who are on the plantation and have been told to vote Democrat their entire lives and can't see the forest through the trees.
Votes gone to Donald Trump. He needed to win it. And
he did.
Another stepping stone in his
And he
possible
did.
path to 270.
Not
Absolutely,
possible.
and another brick
Incredibly
in the
likely
wall,
at this point.
as it were. Has anyone checked in on Nevada? Like, are they okay? Because there's nothing.
Yeah, I
There's
think
nothing
they're
on board
okay.
Okay.
But as far as I know, we haven't seen results from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
As soon as
We've seen an update from Jen O'Malley Dillon, who is running Kamala Harris's campaign, saying they still see a path to victory through the blue wall, but they got to hold Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And Adrian, we're about to get a Fox News projection. Let's go! Yes! We flipped the Senate. Fox News has just projected that the Republicans will gain control of the Senate. You will not be surprised to learn that here at a Trump watch party, Fox News is on every channel and it is broadcasting on every speaker throughout this place, making it very difficult to hear.
And right now, it's not looking good for Harris. I think Trump's going to win. I'm pretty confident.
No one is calling the Senate yet. That
Really?
may be coming very, very soon.
Somebody
but,
just did.
I appreciate that Sam's excited.
Nobody
there,
is.
that Fox News
You
has
mean
done
not
but
you,
that's
the
just
arbiters
a
of
reminder
truth.
of how we do this here at CBC, because it's one of those things where you don't want to be known as a network that's always first for breaking news and never wrong for long. You want to get this right. So we wait, because
the one thing that we were not optimistic about coming into tonight was holding the Senate. That was always going to go. I feel horrible for Senator Brown. It was really tough. So we are expecting to get 50,000 or so votes out of Philly, and that'll be interesting to see what those are. I mean, Philly's generally a reliable blue place. I don't know if that's going to be enough to widen that, to close that gap.
Let's take a look at the wall. I'm not going to call it the blue wall right now. And remember, it was a red wall when Trump won in 2016. The wall not looking good for the Democrats, looking great for the Republicans at
Just
this point
repaint it.
in the night. Nevada, but we still have no results.
I'm worried about Nevada. I mean, I just hope
Maybe
they're
it
okay.
disappeared
I
off the
feel
map.
like they're all right.
Completely.
Yeah. And I'm also
Maybe it
curious
sank
why
into the
Arizona
Pacific
is still
Ocean,
stuck at
jumped over
just
California
50%. Yeah, I
in
feel
a
like
long
we've been
jump
looking at
and went into the
50%
Pacific.
for quite some time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will.
Well, they're neighbors. Maybe they can check on each other. And we'll find out. And also, it may mean that things that people thought were disqualifying about Donald Trump were not at all disqualifying.
Yeah, it appears that way, doesn't it? And it's not the standard I hold myself to, or I would hold anyone who I'd like to represent me. It's not over till it's over, but boy, I'm awfully surprised. And the Senate is a sad situation for the Democrats.
Still stuck, stubbornly stuck. What is happening in Arizona? Good thing Caroline Bargut is right there in Phoenix. Caroline, are you guys okay down there? What is going on in Arizona?
And so far in Maricopa County, we have not received a second batch of numbers. We still only have the first batch. And so it's going to be some time before we find that out. Again, 10 to 13 days. That's what they say the final tally we're expected to get in 10 to 13 days. But I'm hoping we'll get a lot more than 1.8 million votes today.
Yeah, and
So we can
certainly,
update you.
and some understanding of what's happened, of why that's taking so long. All right. Sometimes the process is just slow.
Yeah.
It just takes how long it takes.
Is it time to have a conversation that, like, what is it about Donald Trump? I've been to a lot of Trump rallies. People love the guy. Like, is there something that is just so appealing about that allows people to overlook the negatives, and there are negatives with this guy, and yet he's going to win the popular vote by multiple millions of people.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Does that authentic? Is that what people want? I guess.
Do we really want a candidate that can't complete a sentence, that is DEI inspired, that is joy and propagated by the media, versus somebody that tells us that the media is fake news, that he's right about virtually everything, where the economy was great under him, and that he actually cares about Americans and world peace as opposed to the wars created under Joe Biden? Can anybody possibly wrap their minds around why people might vote for Donald Trump? Huh? You Canuck? You stupid hoser, eh?
Is this what
he's a simple?
Let's have a look at the numbers too. Again, this popular vote is so incredibly important. That is a big spread. It doesn't mean anything electorally. It doesn't change anything about getting to the White House.
Adrian, there are a couple of things that have happened since the last time we chatted. One, we're starting to see the crowd really start to peter out. But sort of the side areas that had been packed with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people,
bye-bye, Dumbies.
They are petering out. There are some bleachers where there just not that many people are still in that area. It had been packed earlier tonight. So that's one thing that's certainly noticeable here. The other thing is there are these gigantic American flags, like the size of a side of a house. They're a gigantic part of the decorations here. One of the prominent flags was slowly brought down without explanation. And, you know, it could be for a variety of reasons, but when you're bringing down something so symbolic at this kind of a political rally, it sort of has a moment there. It's something that everybody noticed. Everybody put up their cameras and sort of took photos and videos of that flag coming down. It's getting late. It's now early morning here in Washington, D.C., and the crowd getting a little listless, getting tired. They're still pumping the music. You know, every time that some major projections don't go Kamala Harris's way, they'll show them up on the wall here. And then shortly after, you know, they'll surge some of the like really good tunes to try and motivate the crowd.
Good tunes,
but we're
Erie.
not seeing the energy
Boy, I'm
we saw at the start of the
Good
night.
tunes.
And of course, people are now starting to actually leave the venue.
Hi, Canada. My name's Jessica. This is my first election that I'm voting, pregnant, my first child. And the most important issue to me this election is the women's right to choose, to protect our bodies. And
You're pregnant and you still demand the right to choose. You have this precious little life inside you. I don't know how many of you guys have heard your baby's heartbeat for the first time from the womb, or seen them come into this world and get to hold them, and you realize how precious this little life is. But, you know, she still wants the right to kill the unborn child inside of her. Okay.
not have the government be telling us what to do.
229 for Donald Trump, 189 for Kamala Harris, getting awfully close, but not there yet. Who is in that motorcade? Well, that is J.D. Vance's motorcade, heading towards, presumably, either Trump headquarters or Mar-a-Lago. There has been...
I don't mean to be morbid.
Sure.
He could be president before then. I mean, Trump is
Morbid.
78, I think. Again, apologies for that. But
did you say the same thing about Joe Biden?
Is President J.D. Vance in the not too distant future?
By the way, President J.D. Vance.
Donald Trump seems to be able to
yesterday
survive anything, so I wouldn't put it past him to go another 4 years,
including his own demise, right? I mean, just
this is an incredible comeback story if it ends up being.
Again, this is the guy that drinks a little bit too much. The guy on the right, this leftist Canadian who believes that he is superior to everybody else and looks down upon you for having a differing opinion and kind of pats you on the head in a patronizing way and tries to educate you. That's my take right now.
It's actually really funny that you said that, because I've been sitting here and obviously texting frantically with people in different places on the ground. Everyone's like, ah! And someone just said, well, people like winners. And he never concedes defeat. Even when he's down, he's not. And there's something about that bravado. I mean, let's be clear. Good old, President Biden, who's kind and lovely, and good old Uncle Joe,
anything but.
Not necessarily seen as like a ferocious winner so much as he is a good person. And there is...
Yeah, he sends his Coke crack-ridden son as his bagman to collect his money from all over the planet and tries to throw his political opponent in jail. What a kindly man he is. Doesn't even recognize his own granddaughter lineage to him.
Something to that. You were talking, I think, Rosemary, about young people and being on the side of a winner is a thing. Now, many of us don't think that he's a winner.
It's a thing, girl.
But he has won multiple times in multiple things that people are gravitating towards.
And speaking, the American networks have made a projection, so CBC News is now ready to make a state call. And that is that Donald Trump will win Georgia, and it's 16 electoral votes. That pushes him closer to winning the 2024 election. You will remember the election in 2020 was a bitter fight. It took 2 weeks to confirm the results in Georgia. Tonight, we're already ready to make this call. Georgia has flipped to the Republican Party after going for Joe Biden in 2020.
Trump has flipped the state. This is one of the 7 swing states that we've been watching so closely in this race. And I'll tell you, this crowd loved that because everything that has come through that screen that they're watching is a win for Trump. And so they've had nothing to do these last few hours except to really cheer and clap and really start dancing. And I told
it's interesting because if Donald Trump heads there and with something to say, even though the momentum is on his side, declaring victory would be premature again at this point.
Don't you dare do it,
It feels like it's getting closer.
Yeah, so close to victory right now. And
Ian, thank you. I want to bring something in here because the co-chair of the Harris camp is actually speaking to the crowd at Harris headquarters. Let's have a listen.
It's going to be good news.
Thank you all.
I bet. Going to be good news for us, for the red team.
By the way,
for those who are anti-blue like me.
He said no sign of Kamala Harris coming tonight. You will not hear from Kamala Harris tonight. That will come tomorrow. Interesting. People starting to leave there. I want to bring in the panel here. Aisha, what do you make of that?
I think that that's the right move. I wouldn't say super too close to call, but there's absolutely no call. And so what is it for her to say at this point? I think
lost.
That, we all said
I'm sorry
we weren't going to have
for
anything
usurping the party's
definitive, at
nomination.
least tonight, going
How about
into
something like
tomorrow.
that?
And that's what it's going to be. Numbers are coming in, though, from Pennsylvania. And I think that the last thing that I saw is that there's more votes coming out of Philly that aren't going to drop until the morning. So that's probably part of this, is the text I just got.
So, sorry, can you explain that again?
I think last time I looked, it was something like 80% of the vote was counted in from Philadelphia, which is the largest metropolis in the state, and that there's no expectation that there will be more reported tonight, and that it will be in the morning when the rest of that comes through. So that might also be what they're getting, at least from election officials, in terms of how the count is going. I think
you're looking as you talk. We're just have the crowds ever thinned out? At Howard,
it's late, girl. Well, I've heard. He just told him to go home. It's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, he just told him to go home. But it is.
And the fact that Detroit isn't in Michigan is also, another thing. It's 1 o'clock in the morning now. Is this going to be decided right now? No. So,
but we're just getting going.
I'm here. Look, I'm here with you guys. I'm just saying, the vice president might want to go to bed because it's going to be an early one for him.
Okay,
so you won't hear from the vice president tonight, but thank you all.
And with that, he left. The crowd started to leave.
Adrian, very obviously, this is not the night the Democrats had been hoping for, and the feeling, the overwhelming feeling of disappointment in this crowd when, at this point in this race where things stand right now, it's not necessarily surprising that Kamala Harris is not going to come out and speak to the crowd tonight. But at the same time, there's still a sense of disappointment here. Over the last hour or so, we really started to see the crowd start to thin out, all sort of around the sides of this quad. It started to thin out, and as sort of the night went on and the results started coming in, you could feel the energy just sort of drain from the crowd, and the level of nerves and disappointment, a mix of a combination of all the things that Democrats here had not been hoping for. It all was just coming to reality. All of the concern and all of the fear that 2024 could be a repeat of 2016, that was the really big fear going into tonight. And now, as the crowd has been told to go home, to get some sleep, with an update and some kind of address from the vice president in the morning, it's certainly this crowd is leaving a sense of disappointment. We saw campaign staffers comforting one another. I didn't see anyone openly crying in the crowd or anything of that nature, but the crowd certainly, the energy level started to dwindle, started to drop, and people started to leave early as there was no word that the vice president was going to come here to address this, especially in light of where the
She's too busy hitting the vodka bottle right now.
Numbers were heading and where the numbers do seem to be heading right now.
I'm thinking, what's happening for the Democrats other than Kamala jumping into this, right? In July, there's not a lot going on. Things are kind of okay compared to where they were in 2020 in terms of motivating Democrats because we're not as angry as we were about the circumstances then. And I wonder when all is said and done and all of these exit polls happen, why did people not come out with the same veracity that they did in 2020 when you had a candidate that was running from
because they realize that they've been lied to by the corporate media and by the Democrats, and that they've been gaslighted about COVID and the vaccine, amongst numerous other things.
Basement, to your point, right?
Let's keep. We were at the Democrats' watch party, and about an hour ago, they just said, "That's it, go home." Threw us out, not impolitely, but they said it's over.
Unfortunately, the Democratic Party has left a lot of people. They're way too far left. Some of the things they believe in, we don't believe in the South. And in this particular election, with immigration being a huge hot topic and the economy being another, unfortunately, that candidate had no opinion on any of that as far as what she was going to do to make the country better. So unless you have a plan, I don't see the point in running for office unless you can tell me what you're going to do for me. So
we're not finished here. There's still more to talk about. And what an interesting woman you just spoke to. The notion of, thanks very much, John, the notion of what is the candidate going to do for me? Maybe this, we are conservative. What is the Democratic Party? What is its identity? These are big questions to come. And what are the things that you think went wrong for Kamala Harris?
Yeah, again, I don't necessarily think that there's anything we can say she went wrong. I think that the narrative was just too much for her to overcome. There's a narrative that Democrats are leaning too far left on cultural issues like abortion, like immigration, like LGBTQ, particularly trans rights. I don't necessarily think it's steeped in what Democrats are truly focused on, but Republicans have shaped the narrative. So even on the economy, the messaging from Republicans is that she didn't have a plan. Well, she had lots of plans she announced. She had lots of plans she proposed, but perhaps it didn't quite break through. I guess for whatever reason, she wasn't able to break through. She, again, had a very short landing, short runway, if you will.
Find the excuses.
Her messaging just wasn't able to break through. But I don't know if there's anything you can say she could have done differently. I just think in this divided, highly partisan nation that I live in, people aren't always listening. It's hard to break through when a narrative has been set. And I think we really saw that in this election.
Let's take a look at what's happening in Nevada. First results.
Finally.
In the state of Nevada, the last of the swing states to report 75% of the votes in, as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, and a pretty sizable lead for Donald Trump in Nevada, as he has really in all.
I actually voted in the state of Nevada, and let me just tell you that doing so from overseas, I went out of my way to find out how to vote for Donald Trump and Sam Brown and every single Republican on the ticket because I'm so anti-blue today.
The swing states, although in the wall, kind of goes back and forth, but he has been consistently leading there as well. So it continues to be a really good night for Donald Trump.
Indeed. How interesting if he ends up taking all of the swing states.
That the Democratic Party has moved too far to the left, that they are no longer representing the vast majority of Canadians, of Americans.
Interesting.
Same thing here. Same thing here. And is there a course correction that is needed? I mean, that is, if these swing states keep moving in that direction, I think that becomes kind of a soul-searching moment for Democrats.
Absolutely. All right, more to think about there. All right, it is now a little past 1 a.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. in Alaska, and that matters because it means all the polls have now closed.
Maybe you can eventually call the election.
Okay, so that's done. The polls have closed. The counting continues. Rosie's like, yes, they've closed. All right, let's talk. What are you thinking, Tia? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to call you Tia. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm sorry.
Call me whatever you want. Donald Trump as president again. I think that for sure the Democrats have some soul searching to do, but I, wonder one of the biggest fears that I have had and will continue to have around the Trump presidency is that he is a bully and he is vindictive, and he has said time and time again that he's going to have a list of people that he considers.
You don't think that trying to bankrupt him, put him in jail on false charges, using lawfare, and then trying to assassinate him might make him look at you with a slight frown on his face? And you think that Donald Trump is the evil person? Interesting.
His enemies, and he's going to use all the resources and his powers to go after those people.
I just want to get a quick chat in with Katie at Harris headquarters before they turn out the lights, I think, basically, Katie.
Yeah, that's what's happening now. Even before the crowd started to leave, we started to see some of the decorations come down. And then, of course, we got that announcement from the campaign co-chair saying, listen, Kamala Harris is not going to be coming out to make any statement right now. Wait until the morning. There will be future guidance in the morning. So they largely see this as, a loss for the Democratic Party and sort of like a moment of reflection.
But it's too early to call.
Sense of disappointment that given everything Donald Trump has said, especially with some of the rhetoric he uses, that America would not just be on track to win the Electoral College, but that he leads in the popular vote. That is something that the people we spoke with say is deeply concerning, deeply disappointing. We spoke with one young woman who said she was very serious about this. It's not just, election night hyperbole. She says she's going to see if she has the kind of resources that she might need to leave the country, because she is predicting from her perspective that it's going to be 4 dark years under.
Please do that. Stay out of the country and burn your passport. Go up to Leftist Canada, where your views on trans issues, where you can get somebody sent to jail for misgendering somebody. That's the leftist utopia that you're praying for. Feel free to go.
Donald Trump, a young woman, a black woman, very deeply disappointed. We spoke with another Harris supporter who is just so overwhelmed and stressed about what may come next.
Mental illness.
Deep sense of disappointment when the co-chair came out to announce that, Kamala Harris was not coming here to Howard. Before the event began tonight, there was such a sense of excitement. People were dancing. It felt like a celebration, and there was a real hope here that perhaps even if Kamala Harris, even if there wasn't going to be a win tonight, that perhaps she would be on track, projected toward a moment in history. And slowly, as the results started coming in and things looked very, very tight in those battleground states, as expected, and Donald Trump was projected the winner by some of these American news networks, the crowd energy just started to dissipate. They weren't even booing at the screen anymore. They were just quiet as the results, particularly when North Carolina was called. There was some booing earlier in the night, still some energy, some fight left. But then when that North Carolina call came in, it was just calm.
Devastating.
So, there they are. Donald Trump's motorcade from Mar-a-Lago, making that 10-minute drive to Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach. And it's Absolutely. I mean, they will have earned that. It's not over yet, but with those margins in the popular vote, with taking the Senate very clearly, with the leaning in the swing states, potentially taking all of them. Say whatever you like, Aisha, about not liking Donald Trump's style or his language or some of the things he's done. Americans like him.
He took a bullet, and he has every right to take a pat on the back for how far he has come in terms of the popular vote. He is not popular with me or my people, and I think that we have a lot to be very fearful of if there is another Donald Trump presidency. But you can't deny the numbers. I mean, nobody cheated, right? Like, no one cheated in this election, and it's playing out. And I think that this is really something that the Democrats are going to have to soul search around. The conversation that we aren't having is why aren't people connecting to the Democratic message, even though you're seeing so much enthusiasm and so many individuals of note coming out to support the Democratic nominee? Why is it that the people are not feeling the same thing that's being projected? And that's going to be
because few people care about celebrity endorsements. I mean, Queen Latifah endorsed Kamala Harris. Queen Latifah never endorses anybody, says Joy Reid, bragging about it. Most people don't even know who Queen Latifah is at this point in time. And nobody cares.
It's her on there.
Yeah. Nobody's closing down here, Adrian. We're actually in Novi, Michigan. Just called Pennsylvania. This is the response.
Yeah, baby.
So it's only Fox News so far, just for whatever it's worth, Susan. That's called Pennsylvania. We certainly haven't called it yet. Not that it's not coming.
No,
but
I appreciate that, but that's what they've been reacting to here this evening is Fox News calling the states. So I appreciate we are not calling Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
no, you
look,
definitely
the polls
shouldn't.
have closed. We're in the wee hours, and the Harris campaign insists that Pennsylvania is not done. They're confident, and they feel that the votes from the cities, from Pennsylvania, from Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, have still yet to report. So they insist that they still have a chance here, but that she is not speaking tonight. They believe that they still have a fighting chance, but the numbers seem to be drifting away from her, and her margins in some of those key areas that where she was showing strength. Biden showed strength back in 2020. It appears that those numbers appear to be slipping away.
All right. Richard Madden, thanks very much. The numbers do indeed appear to be slipping away. We're starting to...
Well, let's look at the wall again. Is it possible that Kamala Harris could actually turn things around in Pennsylvania? Hard to imagine when you look at these numbers, when you look at the lead that Donald Trump has had around. One of the things I was struck by is the people that I interviewed who desperately wanted Kamala Harris to win were so worried and angry about so many of the things that they felt Donald Trump stood for. The people I talked to who were supporters of Donald Trump just cast all that aside. And they said it wasn't important. And what did they talk about? Not so much immigration, the people I talked to in Michigan, it was the economy.
All right, so this is a live shot of Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. The MAGA crowd very, very happy tonight. Chris,
and I'll tell you, if the last time we talked, this had turned into a dance party, it's now a full-on concert crowd here. And what's happening here is the exact opposite of what's happening there, right? I mean, this is a crowd that has gotten more jubilant by the hour.
So if he gets all 7 of those swing states, I hate to ask you a math question.
I was going to say, like, I'm not. It's in my contract. You cannot ask me math questions.
You know what? I suspected that was in the fine print. Yeah, I'll see myself out. Yeah,
that I assume you can do
that. Bigly. Okay, absolutely bigly.
The election is not called in America yet, but they feel as if they know that Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States.
Yeah,
Jason.
Focus right away.
But the problem is your economy is so reliant on those people.
Right.
Those undocumented workers, like removing them, I'm not saying it's going to happen in one foul swoop in that first 100 days or whatever, but just pulling them out, the economy could collapse. That is a real possibility.
Off the tree?
That's a real possibility.
Fear-mongering.
Americans
I realize
can't do
that people
jobs.
are going to say that this is a premature conversation to be having because we haven't heard from him yet. The races haven't fully been called, but the trend lines are very, very clear at this point. It sounds impossible for this to be heading in any other direction.
So I think that the same will be true here. It looks like it's highly likely that the Democrats will be able to take the House, lost the Senate, and then, you figure out what happens from there, right? Let's remember the backdrop of this is that Donald Trump's agenda, because he doesn't have one, he has concepts of a plan, but he doesn't really have a plan because his plan was already written and it's called Project 2050. And those folks, or 2025.
All right, so that's how we do it. You should know that Fox News has called the election, the entire election, for Donald Trump. It is just Fox News so far. It is the only
Nothing
one,
to pay attention to.
but boy, that would be an announcement that it
mentioned Fox News called this presidency for Donald Trump, and the crowd went wild. I just saw two guys give each other a big high five and a bear hug. And
at this point where Donald Trump is in the House there at headquarters in West Palm Beach, this is just a matter of waiting until he pops up on that stage. Only one network so far. It is Fox News, which has called the election for Donald Trump, but it is the only one to have done that so far. So we're not doing that until a plurality of the U.S. networks have made that call. There's still some counting going on,
That's
but the
right,
margins
you're subservient to
are
America.
shrinking ever
Remember
so quickly in that counting, and the spread for him is widening at this point. Interrupt you here for a moment. So we have a call to make, and it is a state call. And it is a projection that CBC News is ready to make a call for Donald Trump in the great state of Pennsylvania.
It is a great state
A whopping
on this
19
day.
electoral votes, that pushing him so much closer to winning the 2024 election. Pennsylvania has been at the top of the list of key states that could decide the election. Donald Trump has just won Pennsylvania, and look at that marker, 265 to 194.
I feel like a bit of a broken record at this point.
That will become one of the great political images of the 21st century, that there is no...
Absolutely. And by the way, the leftist media tried to subdue that image. They refused to play it because it would make Donald Trump to look too strong. They actually changed the front page of a Time magazine and removed it because they're just propagandists. That's what they are. And when he got shot, CNN had headlines like popping noises heard, and another one had Donald Trump falls during election rally. That's just an example of how dishonest the media is. And if there's one thing to take away from this, it's the fact that it is actually fake news propaganda shills for the Democrat uniparty establishment.
Doubt the blood on his face, this 100%. That was a turning point.
Yeah, the blame game has already been starting to emerge among Democratic circles, that the get out the vote that the Democrats kept priding themselves on just wasn't there. And if you look, huge disappointment for Team Harris.
Math. I've missed talking to you about math over the last.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about math. I'm going to talk about the sense of inevitability that there is about a Trump win. There are now 4 paths. He is so close to 270 electoral college votes. And look at the size of that lead by percentage, just huge in a state the Democrats have generally done very, very well in. And if he gets any of those states confirmed, then we can confirm at CBC that he is going to the White House. It certainly does feel inevitable. And
Harris had the celebrities. She had the Republicans who had moved over. At this point, does this mean the end of the relevance of those kinds of endorsements?
Largely.
Well, I said
Musk.
this in 2016. If you recall, the night before the election, when Hillary Clinton ended up here, she had Jay-Z perform for her, which was a big deal because this is back before Jay-Z and Beyonce were really in it. I mean, they kind of did a thing for Obama, but they weren't really like political people. And the fact, and it was in Ohio. And it was like, oh my goodness, she's going to win. She's galvanizing the cultural zeitgeist and all the young people. Didn't happen then. And I think we saw there that, that wasn't working. Look, Taylor Swift came out with an endorsement. Big deal. Beyonce, Oprah Winfrey, all these people. And the truth is that, you know, it's fun to have the memes. And I, you know, said this too. You can have all the TikTok memes that you want, right? But that doesn't necessarily get people to go out and to vote. And I think that there is a real disconnect. We always talked about how to, you know, take those movements off of the tweets and now out of the TikToks and actually turn them into some kind of tangible change. And the Democrats haven't quite figured that out yet. And it's something that we got to figure out.
You know, when you see the celebrity endorsements, you know, the average American is not hanging out with Taylor Swift and Oprah, and it's almost like, well, who's the elite person here? I mean, he's the billionaire, but these are not our friends. And it's to Paul's point about authenticity.
I think also, you know, that the media gets hung up on stuff that doesn't matter to a lot of the people who voted for Donald Trump tonight. From cats and dogs, to Puerto Rican islands of garbage, all that stuff that seemed like that's the end of it all. There's nobody who can survive
all these disqualifying statements.
But the people who were nobody cares.
By who? By
back to the
Canadian?
economy and all that. That's
Talking
what
about a real
matters. The other
problem?
stuff, it's just noise that people like to put in headlines. And we're a party to that. You know, it's all of it is really. We've seen this before, though. We have this whole world, the liberal media elites, etc., isn't doing anything for them.
And this is not an American phenomenon.
No,
it's
not
an exclusively American phenomenon by any stretch.
Nor just North American. It's in Western Europe as well. You know?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And that the Democratic Party is going to have to totally rethink how they approach everything, because if they're losing close to half of Latino voters in this election after saying that a comedian's opening insult joke was going to change the whole campaign. I mean,
exactly.
They got to get serious.
Well, there may not be many left after Trump decides he's going to round them up and deport everybody. I mean, this is the thing that really gives
But
me
is
pause.
that not to Kevin's point?
No. All the Latino voters that theoretically voted were legally voted. So there are going to be plenty, the same number of Latino voters next time, approximately. That's the reality. But Trump rounding everybody up and sending them back, they're all illegals. They shouldn't be voting. I know in her mind that they already are because she's a Democrat. So she's perfectly okay with cheating.
Illegal and legal?
So I don't think anybody's illegal. Just
here illegally?
Here
Nobody's
illegally
here
is
illegally.
different than calling
Nobody
people
here.
illegal.
Nobody's here
But
illegally.
you know, I'm just reminded of a time
Leftist
when there was authority
mindset.
to have internment camps and to round up Japanese people, as someone who is of Japanese descent. When you say, I have a concept of a plan, but I'm going to just start mass deporting people, what does that look like and what does that mean logistically? Those are the things that I'm really interested in the first 100 days of really understanding what the plan is, right? You can't just go around and make these blanket statements and then say, oh yeah, I'm going to do all this stuff and not actually have a way to do it. I'm also concerned about, you say, oh, nobody's, really thinking about Project 2025. It's the thing that they write and no one implements. Well, it's not quite true. And so
people here are, leaving. There's a lot of international media. We've had, 650 accredited media. They're all taking off. The votes are coming in so slowly, as you realize. So slowly. I mean, we're for money, because now, of course, you can just tap whatever.
Caroline, I got to interrupt you. Because Donald Trump has arrived at West Palm Beach at that headquarters. This is his walk-on song. Let's have a listen.
God bless you and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right, that was Donald Trump at West Palm Beach, Florida, with his family. There you go. There he goes. There's the dance. You knew it was going to come. J.D. Vance. Listen, the numbers are still technically 266. The momentum is undeniable. Donald Trump knows exactly where this is going. This is a Donald Trump win. It is also a Kamala Harris loss.
Don't frame it like that.
I think that
I got to
it's
reframe.
bigger than Kamala Harris, and ran a flawless campaign, frankly.
Flawless.
Well, there were
clearly some flaws, though. It didn't work.
It wasn't any flaws.
Don't go there, girl.
And that there were any gaps in the campaign. It just wasn't enough. But as I kind of go through this, some of the things that shock me that I think that she's got to address and the party's got to address, Michigan, 62% of Latinos went for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Which is a massive, now
Jaw-dropping.
Jaw-dropping.
It is,
Jaw-dropping. What has happened that the big tent coalition is fracturing in this way? I think that's really the question, and that's something that, you know, isn't necessarily simply on Kamala Harris's shoulders. She certainly should address it, but I think the party writ large, we got to figure this out, because this is data, right? These are just the facts, the numbers, it's win. And this is serious.
I mean, this is still a moment to acknowledge his win, right? And acknowledge the magnitude of this win.
No, she can't do that.
You know,
it is a monster win.
It's her loss, but
it's
not
his
win,
win.
it's her loss.
And not only did he not, this is the wrong way to put it, but game the system. He didn't sneak through because of the Electoral College machinations. He won the popular vote. I mean,
he blew it out. Yeah,
never been able to say that before. Americans listened and they voted. Most eligible voters said yes to all of that, right? We saw the euphoria at Trump headquarters. On the other side of the equation is dread, right, from his critics. And we heard some of that on the show tonight from David Crum and others. Right?
All the time.
But most Americans heard his promises per the popular vote and said yes. I mean, who would have thought this? Like the degree to which he ran the board.
While there are lots of Americans who will feel upset about tonight, is it spares the United States what many people feared. The violence, the questioning, the rioting, the uprising, the not peaceful transition of power. It sort of puts to bed the idea that democracy was on the ballot. I mean, we'll see how he governs, but for this period of time,
it definitely was on the ballot. If we had elected the Democrats, I guarantee you that the democracy would be in peril, because they would try to install mechanisms that would ensure uniparty rule for all time. And Donald Trump is the disruptor of this. Donald Trump is the true American hero. Thumb up if you agree, please.
Right. It actually sort of shores up the notion of democracy in some ways. And it puts aside the idea that Americans are going to have to take to the streets, because the victory is too big for that. Like, there will be people who will be mad, but it cannot lead to the things that some people feared the most.
But some might say that's only because that side won, right?
There you go, Paul.
Yes, perhaps. But I also think because the victory is so big, it becomes very difficult for that kind of thing to happen. But yes, maybe it's because that's not what Democrats do anyway.
Well, look,
Kevin doesn't agree with
let's not go there.
But that's what I meant.
I know that's what you mean. I know that's what you mean. But
that's the case.
But that's what America is spared tonight.
Right? Because
that's my point.
There's no disputing it. There's no questioning what just happened there. It's very, very clear. At least one network has already called this election for Donald Trump, but until a plurality of them do, because so much counting is happening, it may feel like a technicality. It may indeed end up being a technicality, but we will be right. So when we hit that magic 270 number, we will let you know. Because the numbers are still so stubborn, we have a question naturally for Ian. Is Nevada okay? Arizona okay? What is happening with the numbers? What are we waiting for?
Yeah, I mean, baby steps now from 266 to 270, and there are 4 paths that Trump can take to get to the White House. I mean, it's going to happen. In any event, he's going to get to 270. The question is it going to happen at 350 this morning? Or 450?
Oh, wash your mouth out, Mr. Hemmings.
550?
Oh, stop.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or no.
It is tomorrow.
Whatever day we're on.
Yeah.
Whatever are you trying to drive at there, Ian?
Yeah. Anyway, it's going to happen.
All right. And we will...
Inevitable.
Thanks for coming out, Ian. All right, good morning. It's 3:46 in the morning. Donald Trump has already spoken, has already thanked everyone, talked about what he will do in his presidency. You can see the numbers, though. They're still stuck down there. 266 for Trump, 219 for Kamala Harris. Don't be under any illusions, though, that this is still close or something else is going to happen. This is, at this point, a matter of being certain that the trends, which are certainly undoubtedly heading towards Donald Trump being in the White House, it's just finalizing those numbers and getting an accurate call for each of the remaining states and determining whether this is a night where the 7 swing states that were considered up for grabs all went to Donald Trump.
She didn't go through, this is not the result of a primary process. Nobody voted for her to be the nominee. And then just the short runway that we've talked about, no time for her. All this, arguably, pointing fingers, can be, why did you hang on? Why did you put self ahead of party?
Again, not the media for gaslighting the public about Joe Biden's mental acuity. None of that could have dislodged him from office because the Uniparty wanted their little puppet that they could manipulate so easily. And Kamala Harris would have been the same thing.
To use that. That's not the question you asked. You asked about what he can get done now before the end of his presidency. But is that a part of his legacy now, that he stayed too long? And as a result, it's Donald Trump 2.0.
And 48%, presumably, based on what we're seeing right now, of America lost. So the question becomes, tomorrow morning, 48% of America is going to wake up heartbroken, afraid, largely, right? So it's not anger, right? Not running around with pitchforks, angry and mad. We're scared. We're vulnerable. We're frustrated.
Thanks to people like you
absolutely
who preach
be a
this
whole
narrative.
lot of, finger pointing at the Democratic Party. But what now is Donald Trump going to do to quote unquote unite America? Because 48% of the people can't stand him. And what is he going to do to reach across and to develop an agenda that feels inclusive? That's really the question at hand.
Nobody cares about inclusivity. All we care about is merit, who you are. Let me judge you based on your character, not your color of your skin, to paraphrase MLK. But this notion, this paradigm of the world and how it should be has disappeared from the left today.
And it's something that he's never done.
The only thing we know for sure is that Donald Trump has effectively won this election, if not officially.
Absolutely. Thank you for all the math tonight and math on live television.
I didn't do math.
We only have about, after 8 hours.
Full-on stunner. Who would have thunk this?
Well, Kevin.
Kevin,
me.
Indeed.
You guys out there, thumb up if you agree.
Democrats are going to wake up tomorrow morning thinking, WTH, what the heck happened? And we'll begin to ask the question, maybe, what did we do wrong? What did they do wrong? What did Democrats do wrong? What did they miss in the debate the last X number of weeks and months? Because
isn't it
they
obvious?
got it wrong, clearly.
Good morning. Travis Danraj takes over our coverage because this is not over yet. But the bottom line takeaway is that he read the room and he read it correctly. And there is no doubting what happened here. There's unlikely to be any trouble in the streets. This is not a close election where the lawyers are lining up. This wasn't close.
Thank God for that.
And I think the conversations that are going to happen in the next few days are apparently celebrity endorsements, huge ones. Nobody cares what Taylor Swift thinks, right? Or Beyonce.
No.
And part of what some Republicans, Americans have been saying is that, those people are not in our stratosphere. We hate the gas prices. We want someone who's going to fix it, even though a president can't do that.
CBC News is calling Donald Trump the winner of the state of Wisconsin, another of those 7 key battleground states. And there on the bottom of your screen, you see the number from Wisconsin, the 10 Electoral College votes in Wisconsin, takes him above the 270 Electoral College vote threshold and takes him into
Thumb up the
White
video
House.
if you like this result.
Donald J. Trump will be the next U.S. president. He becomes the leader of the world's most powerful nation for a second time, 45 and now 47. He is the first former president in the modern era to be elected again after losing an election. That has not happened in almost 130 years. You have to go back to the presidencies of Grover Cleveland. Trump's return to the White House is marked by other firsts. He will be the first twice impeached president to be reelected. He will be the first president convicted in a criminal court and found liable in civil court. He is still facing a federal indictment and potential trial over allegations he tried to overturn the 2020 election. Now he has won the 2024 race, and he will be, as I mentioned, the 47th president of the United States. Governing with a mandate from Americans voting for his promise of prosperity and deep tax cuts. That pledge could come with profound consequences for Canada. Trump says he'll bring in tariffs that could disrupt Canadian trade with the United States and Ottawa's relations with Washington. There are dark clouds, too, in Trump's vow to make America great again. He's vowing to stop illegal migrants with an unprecedented crackdown and deportation, saying he will begin rounding up millions of people on the first day of his presidency.
Thank you for
in his speech early this morning, Trump says he will bring the country together, saying he will be united and will unite Americans of all background in common cause. Donald J. Trump, the 47th president of the United States.
Well, that was absolutely delightful. I'm so grateful that Donald Trump won. And the CBC is an arm of the Liberal Party that actually pays for them to be employed. So how do you think that they're going to report on things? What shading, what color are they going to give what they document, how they frame things? And that Aisha Mills character, as I played for you my little clip where I made fun of her for her racism and her sexism, it's these types of people that have held sway over American minds as the woke crap has been inundated upon college students and Americans of all stripes. And with Donald Trump, we are going to see an end to that. We are going to see a return to 1776 versus 1619. The 1619 project is what I'm referencing. So thank goodness that Donald Trump won, and the CBC coverage, thank you for framing it as such that I could make fun of it. Please, guys, thumb up the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe if you haven't. We've got plenty more to discuss. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. Peace out.